Hello, everyone. Welcome into another edition of Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, our Sunday night call-in show, 10 o'clock Eastern time. And I've got to say, I feel amazing. I feel great today. I just put on some moisturizer. That is something I don't typically do. No, I'm not a moisturizing person. But I've been advised by my daughter and a significant other to use moisturizer. So I have started. It's been purchased for me. And during these days of being cooped up, more so than I usually would be, my face and my skin are drying out. So they have recommended, and not only recommended, but again, daughter and significant other, when they recommend, and also when my daughter purchases the product for me, I got to put it on. And I got to say that after a nice brisk shower, brisk is typically used for cold. It wasn't a brisk shower. It's a nice hot shower, invigorating shower. I put on some moisturizer and I feel good. Got some exercise in today, both on the walking trail, not really a trail, the trail that I've set out in my condo development area here and around town. Put in about 4 miles, where I typically walk and put in some sprints too. I'm not a jogger. I don't jog. It's always been boring to me to jog. And that's the excuse I use now. Now it just wears me out. But I don't like to jog. But what I do is I walk briskly. Okay, I can use the word briskly correctly pertaining to my walk. A brisk walk. And also some sprints mixed in. Some uphill sprints. I use the inclines to sprint. And I'm invigorated. Also did some yoga tonight. So 2 workouts for this kid today and tonight. And no ice cream, no junk food today. I did have 2 burgers on the grill. So that wasn't exactly healthy. But besides that, I currently have frozen fruit, broccoli, protein mix, a number of greens in the blender, ready to be blended into a little shake tonight. I warded off the temptation to run down to Dairy Queen this afternoon. Warded that off, and I'm glad that I did, because as of right now, Dairy Queen is closed. And it's 131 days till college football, as we optimistically hope and pray and believe that we will have a full college football season starting on, I believe that 131 days takes us to August 29th. There's a large possibility that that's going to be compromised, maybe a week, maybe a month, maybe about 5 weeks. But bring us some college football in 2020. All right, welcome in everyone to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. It's great to see you. Hopefully you've had a great day as well. And if you haven't, I know how you feel. I've been there many, many times. You don't have to wait for the next day. You don't have to say, well, tomorrow's a new day. I'm going to have a great day. And that's a great attitude to have, but you can always change things just like that. So let's be grateful for what we have. I hope that everybody in your household and everyone, meaning your loved ones and significant others, your family, friends, everyone like that is healthy and safe. All right, we've got a number of college football Twitter polls that we have posted in the last couple of weeks, and I want to update you on our Twitter polls. If you follow me on Twitter, then you can submit a poll and I will post it on Twitter, Mark Rogers TV. I'm easy to find, just like you found me here, Mark Rogers TV. You can find me there on Twitter as well. So our polls have included, let's see if I can if I am able to coordinate this at the same time, to be able to look at my polls on Twitter and then also post the graphic. Let's see how good I am here. Our most recent poll deals with Miami over-under total posted by Caesars Palace in Vegas. Of course, all the over-unders come out. And if you're not familiar with wagering, basically Vegas projects how many games each team in college football, the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA, pick your sport, will win that particular season. And then you can wager the over or the under. So for the Miami Hurricanes, and of course, we've got a Miami live show that we present each and every week. And this is one of the reasons why I chose Miami. We could do it with every other team in college football. The projection for Miami's win total this year, assuming they play and everyone else plays a complete 12-game regular season in college football in 2020, the win total for Miami is 8.5. Now, we know that they will not win 8.5 games, but that is the favorable betting numbers on the half, because that way you know that you're going to get a clear-cut winner or loser. So if you believe that Miami is going to win more than 8.5 games, meaning 9-3, 10-2, 11-1, or 12-0, then you bet the over. And for the benefit of our poll, you select the under if you believe Miami is going to go 8-4 or worse. Don't leave your selections here in the live chat. Go to Mark Rogers TV on Twitter and vote there. Right now, the under is winning 70 to 30%. And that's a lot more than 10 votes, not 7-3. All right, our next poll is whether, and this was submitted by our Notre Dame guests, and we will again be talking Notre Dame football at 6 o'clock Eastern time on Monday night. Tomorrow night, 6 o'clock Eastern time, Notre Dame football for 1 hour. Can Notre Dame recruit at an elite level in the current landscape of college football? Right now, 58% of you are saying yes, and 42% are saying no way. Our next poll deals with the rankings of coaches in the Pac-12. So each and every offseason, or most offseasons, I shouldn't say every offseason, but most offseasons, I rank the coaches in college football. And I aim to do that once again this offseason. So I will rank the coaches in the 5 major conferences, 1 through 10, 12, or 14. And then I will display my top 10 coaches in college football, 1 through 10. Best coach in the Pac-12. Simply, who was the best coach in the Pac-12? Now, if you go on Twitter and look at my poll, you see only 4 options, but I clearly state here that write-in votes are accepted because I want to know, and I don't have the opportunity to post 12 slots. I can't give you 12 options in the poll. Twitter only allows 4. So right now, Kyle Whittingham is winning with 50% of the vote out of 72 votes. 72 votes cast total. There was a discussion recently brought to my attention concerning Clemson's rivals. Of course, within the Palmetto State of South Carolina, they play the Gamecocks of South Carolina each and every final weekend of the regular season. That is what I consider to be Clemson's biggest rival personally against South Carolina, regardless of how good the teams are. Clemson has beaten South Carolina, I believe, 5 consecutive years. I believe since 2015. Yes, 5 consecutive years. But Clemson fans, keep in mind that can change. Because just prior to that, for you younger Clemson fans who have been rooting for the team for less than 5 years, you may not be aware that South Carolina beat Clemson the previous 5 consecutive times. So it's not been that long. It hasn't been long since South Carolina was dominating Clemson. So who is Clemson's biggest rival? Is it South Carolina? Is it Georgia Tech? So there is a rivalry between Georgia Tech and Clemson. They are designated rivals according to the ACC, as determined by the ACC. Every team in the Atlantic has a designated rival in the Coastal Division, and for Clemson, it's Georgia Tech. They have a long-standing rivalry. Of course, Florida State has been the main competition in the Atlantic Division, and Florida State owned the Atlantic before Clemson took it over in 2015. So is it Florida State, or is it on the national scene because they've been the dominant program since 2015? Is it Alabama? Alabama, Florida State, Georgia Tech, or South Carolina? I will get to your comments in just a second. And of course, the phone lines are open, everyone. 860-325-3687. 860-325-3687. Our next poll question, our Voice of College Football poll question on Twitter. Again, do not give me your responses here. You certainly can talk it up in the live chat, but I'm not going to keep record of them. Twitter does that for me. Who will be Ohio State's biggest threat in the Big Ten over the next 5 years? Again, I was only given 4 spots, and my 4 selections were Michigan, Nebraska, Penn State, and Wisconsin. You could choose somebody else if you would like. Write-in votes are accepted. But the 4 most logical choices for me, Michigan, Nebraska, Penn State, and Wisconsin. And currently, Penn State is winning in a landslide, which I agree with, at 71% out of 73 total votes. Before we dive into the college football talk for tonight, and again, the number is 860-325-3687, I would like you to check out my buddy Steve Thompson's YouTube channel. He posts once a week the top 5 memes of the week, and he takes the recommendations and suggestions brought in by his audience, and it's just a good time. Memes are fun. He makes it even more fun. So he runs down what he has received, and he surveys the memes that he gets for the week, and he chooses the top 5 of the week, and he runs them down, and it is quite the good time. So if you want to laugh a little bit, think a little bit, just have a good time, Steve will bring a different angle and perspective to a number of subjects out there in a lighthearted, fun way. So check him out on YouTube. Just go to the Steve Thompson Show. Look him up on, I believe, Steve Thompson. If you look up Steve Thompson, there's a lot of Steve Thompsons out there, but I hope you'll find him if you just simply look up Steve Thompson on YouTube. Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hi, Mara. This is Jesse.
Jesse, how are you?
Doing pretty good. Had a little bit of dyslexia when I was typing in your phone number. I pushed 2-5 or 5-2 rather than 2-5 or whichever way.
You're here. That's all that matters, Jesse.
I know, right? I got it right.
What's on your mind?
No. As I want to, as you know, I'm a Clemson fan. I just want to sit here and say, South Carolina, USC Junior, as some people want to call. They are our number 1 rival, but considering your poll, I would have to put Georgia Tech still up there. I know a lot of Clemson fans going to disagree with that, but there's something to the history with Clemson and Georgia Tech. It was our number 1, like as a program beginning, it was our number 1, like advertising. You know, because Atlanta was such a large area. We went down there. We actually even started the tradition of the $2 bill with the Clemson stamp, and I still even have the stamp with the tiger paw from my grandfather. So that's got to be something, you know. So, even if it's not competitive, there's still a tenacity between the two teams.
Well, I know that our Clemson guy, Ryan Cantor of Shaking the Southland from SB Nation, comes on from time to time, and he stands by that Georgia Tech rivalry as being, he stands by that Georgia Tech rivalry as being number 1 for Clemson. And I'm sure that he could run down not just the history, but there's typically a tipping point to rivalries. There was something that happened at some point between the two schools, the two teams. It usually goes beyond just the football teams. There's a regional conflict or something that went on between the two schools that caused some animosity, something that got rooted, and then it's now made its way to the football field, and that was the best way to kind of solve the conflict.
Yeah,
that's usually what's happened.
And go ahead.
I'm just saying that's typically been the origin of most rivalries.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that because, heck, actually, when I was in high school, I was studying engineering, and I was looking at both going to Clemson and Georgia Tech. I wanted to do aerospace, and unfortunately, I didn't have the grades for it. But the only place that I could have gone, and as good of an engineering school as Clemson is, they don't offer aerospace. So I think that was kind of like they were two big engineering schools in the area, and you kind of like had to fight over those. And that even kind of extends down into the NC State rivalry slightly. I wouldn't call that one as much of a rivalry, but I remember growing up that was called the Textile Bowl. So I mean, they tried to tie. I think a lot of schools back in the day tried to tie things together to make it more competitive, and some of it died out over the years, especially with the just sheer competition on the field. Like you get blown out. There ain't no meaning to having any type of background story when you lose every year. And what was it? About 3 years ago, NC State was they were competing with us, and I can remember about 5-8 years before that. I'm really bad with years, but I can remember Georgia Tech. We play them every year because there are what is it? There are division rivals. Like from the other division, from
Sure.
the Coastal, we play them every year, and it would always seem like we came down to the last play. And I can remember under Tommy Bowden, literally sitting in the stadium, sitting here watching them, and we would go for the 10 yards every time. Every time we'd been driving down the field, getting about 3-4 yards per rush, and then doing a little quick pop pass out the side, a little screenplay, and driving it down the field because it was I wouldn't say a shootout, but it was a battle, and it kind of came always down to the last. You remember the famous scene of the Clemson fans sitting in the GT stands going after the game because we would always blow it. I mean, we would sit here and try to throw the ball for a first down when we could just meticulously, slowly try to drive it down the field, you know? It was so frustrating as a Clemson fan. Especially against Paul Johnson with his freaking triple option.
So as you know, the last time he lost to Georgia Tech was in 2014. I believe that was a game that Deshaun Watson got hurt. That was his freshman season.
It was the one he went out.
He lost 28-6, and he lost in 2011. That was the year that Clemson won the ACC championship, but they lost to Georgia Tech 31-17. So that's two fairly recent losses, 2011 and 14, and beat them in 2010, and lost to them in 2009 in the ACC championship game, and also lost to them in the regular season in 2009. So that seems like a long time ago for a lot of people, certain people, but to me, 2009 is 11 years ago. Things can change, and two losses to Georgia Tech in 2009, 11, and 14. So,
and those were our losses that like they were like brink losses. Like, if we wouldn't have lost to them, we could have gone to a little bit higher of a bowl game.
Sure.
Or something. We wouldn't have won the ACC because we were still with Florida State.
You would have in 2009. You lost to them in the ACC championship game.
Yep. And I think that was the game with the Crier guy. You remember that?
No, I'm not familiar with that. Don't remember this game off the top of my head.
There was one game that we lost like in the last couple seconds, and there was it's similar to the Florida State fan reading a book in empty Doak Campbell Stadium. Is a Clemson fan just literally crying for about 10, 15 minutes after the game in the stadium. It's hilarious.
Yeah, lost to Georgia Tech 4 consecutive times back in the late 2000s.
And that's what it was. It was the last game that we lost to them, and I want to say it was the regular season. What was the last loss that you said? 2009.
2014 in the regular season.
Yeah. I want to say it was before that, but the one again with Deshaun Watson, we was gonna win that game if he didn't go out. That was the game that he tore his ACL.
Maybe.
And came back and had a stronger ACL.
Yeah, he did pretty well. I don't know what's happened to him since, but I understand he's doing all right. All right, Jesse. Anything else on your mind?
No, I just wanted to run by the Clemson rivalries. If you got other people on the line, I'll let you run. I just wanted to point that out because a lot of, like you say, a lot of the younger Clemson fans don't exactly understand the history or anything like that involved with a lot of the rivalries. I can remember as a kid even going and watching us losing to UNC in Death Valley.
Sure.
That was fun. But hey, Mark, I'll let you run.
I appreciate it, Jesse.
Have a good night. I'm gonna get on. Watch the rest of the show.
Good stuff. Nice to hear from you.
Well, no problem.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. You can call me at 860-325-3687. There's the number right there. Anything you'd like to talk about concerning college football, and we may even stretch it a little bit beyond that, depending on your topic. Maybe. But we talk college football here. I am the voice of college football, so we would like to keep it within the college football realm. Now, worst comes to worst, if we don't have college football this fall, I don't know what this channel is going to do. We may have to play out a college football season ourselves. Can you imagine? We may have to do that. May have to play the entire season ourselves in our heads. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
What's up, Marcus? JT Sports.
JT, what's going on, man?
Nothing, man. I'm just chilling. There's this pandemic and everything that's going on.
What's on your mind, man? I hope you're doing all right.
Yeah, I'm doing fine.
Okay.
So, I just wanted to tell everybody. So, somebody asked, is there a school in the Big Ten? And is there two schools? Well, it was a question. It was, in 5 years, will anybody be able to challenge Clemson in the ACC? And in 5 years, will anybody be able to challenge Ohio State in the Big Ten? And I have two teams for both of those questions. So, for the Big Ten, and this is more from like some inside sources. Like I got friends that are rated and things like that have come like toured the campuses and told me how they feel about the program. So for the ACC first, North Carolina is most definitely the team that is going to end up coming out the ACC that's going to be able to challenge Clemson in the next 5 years. Now, from the few friends I had that actually went on visits there, surprisingly, they really, really like the University of North Carolina. And I was like, really? North Carolina? I was like, so I had asked them, right? So I asked one friend, I was like,
Miami or UNC? Who would you choose? And he said North Carolina probably that. I was like, really? Why? He was like, man, North Carolina, they have a vibe going on. And I guess like Mac Brown and things like that, I guess like he's like a really good talker. And it's just like a lot of people talk about the vibe. And like for some reason they're buying into the culture at the University of North Carolina. And then when we talk about the Big Ten, Minnesota is another school that's going to be on the rise. And I mean, Minnesota, you can tell by like they're like top 10 in recruiting right now as of the current rankings for 2021. Yeah, I believe. Yeah, I'm just checking it now. Yeah, I believe they're top 10 right now. They just got a couple of guys that are pretty good. So like Minnesota and UNC are going to be able to challenge the top guys in the ACC within the next 5 years. UNC is going to be able to challenge Clemson, and I believe Minnesota's going to be able to challenge Ohio State. And I think a lot of people are really feasting on Minnesota. I really want to see Minnesota face Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game this past year, Mark. Because I don't know about you, but I really thought that Minnesota would have been able to give Ohio State a big test. Especially considering the fact that Justin Fields was on one leg, and the reason why I feel they would have been able to give them a better test than what Wisconsin did, even though Wisconsin really did push it to the limit, but I feel like Wisconsin's offense wasn't as good as what Minnesota was able to do. Minnesota could throw the ball, and they could also run the football as well, and they had a pretty good defense, man. So I just wanted to say those are the two programs who I feel are going to be able to challenge the respective teams of their conferences right now.
So, JC Sports, let's go back to the beginning of your rundown there. You went to who to determine what teams are best equipped to challenge Ohio State and Clemson? Where did you rely on your feedback?
I relied on a couple of close friends that have toured a couple of campuses like Minnesota and the University of North Carolina that are like rated prospects. And the couple of them that I talked to, that I played football with this past year, they said that they really love the university.
Okay, well, they certainly have a credible angle and a different perspective on things. I thought you were just talking to people on campus, just because you talk to students on campus. Okay, you're talking to actual football players who are looking at schools. I think that's an interesting way to take it. I don't necessarily know that they're in position to give an unbiased and informative angle, but I think it's a very interesting take and a very unique take, because not a whole lot of people get to talk to and get the feedback from the actual student athletes and why they're choosing the schools that they are. And of course, they're talking to other soon-to-be college football players and getting their insight into why a particular coach or a particular program's hot. So I like that. That's interesting.
Yeah, somebody told me it was like I asked a 5-star. He's a junior right now, but he's one of the top corners in his class right now. I don't think I can give out his name, but I asked him what are 3 factors that goes into choosing a school, and he told me, he was like, the first thing is winning. Like, everybody wants to go to a school. Most of them want to go to a school to win championships and compete. And I was like, why go to a school that already has the name, that's already established brand, when you can go to a no-name school or kind of like a Minnesota and build your brand there? And he was like, because if you go to a school like an Alabama, things like that, they're a powerhouse, and everybody wants to win championships. And also, you got a better chance of getting drafted because of how good the coaching staff is and things like that. So basically it was prestige. Then the second thing was the coaching staff, because everybody wants to go to the school that gives them the best chance to go to the NFL, which is coaching staff and their ability to develop talent. And I was like, well, I go to a school at Alabama. If you would go to another school and start right away, he was like, sometimes you got to be able to be willing to sit for a couple of years to become a better player. And I was like, okay, I understand that. And the last thing they said is basically like, is it a good fit? Like, basically, they was like, when you go to a campus, basically the school you choose, like, you're going to walk on campus after you take that visit. You're going to have it in your mind. You're going to be like, hey, this is for me. Like, this is the proper place and things like that. So, like, those were the 3 things that I found out really interesting when it came to the recruiting process. And I always felt it was a little bit interesting getting into the mind of some of these guys. And now my question will kind of answer.
I was watching the documentary of Football Life on Michael Vick on the NFL Network last night, and he was a big fan of Donovan McNabb, who was still at Syracuse at the time, and he had it down to Syracuse and Virginia Tech. And Virginia Tech didn't have much of a football tradition or history at that point. They had started to win, and he was making a decision between Virginia Tech and Syracuse. He chose Virginia Tech because Syracuse was winning under Donovan McNabb, and he thought that he could go to, instead of just following in Donovan McNabb's footsteps and just continue the winning there, that he would go to Virginia Tech and build his own reputation for building a program and being known as a guy years down the road that was the guy at that program that started it on the track of winning. So that's why Michael Vick chose Virginia Tech over Syracuse.
Yeah, and like it's really weird because like you think with like the whole when you think about the college athletes, like most of these guys have big egos and things like that. Not just big egos, but you think they would want to go build their own brand. So I always find it interesting how they always end up going to the schools like a Clemson or Alabama that's already established. But I get the argument. And then also when you think about Michael Vick having built up that Virginia Tech program, I also think about Johnny Manziel as well. Now, I'm pretty sure he ain't going to Tech. I don't know if he went to Texas A&M because he wanted to build them up. But, I mean, he really, in my opinion, I think he kind of put Texas A&M on the map. I mean, when you think about Texas A&M football, you can't forget those Johnny Manziel days. I still remember the play when he was scrambling against Alabama. He dropped what? He ran in circles for about a good 15 yards, threw the ball in the middle of the field, and Mike Evans just caught it over like 3 Alabama defenders.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I'm just agreeing with you, man. Like I agree with I just think it's really weird because like I don't know, man. It's just really strange to me, man. But I mean, I just wanted to share my thoughts, my insights with you, man. And then the last question I'm gonna leave you with before I go away, I want to ask you what you think about the Pac-12. So basically, it's Oregon and then it's everybody else. So, like, a lot of people have been saying Arizona State is a sleeper. What about Arizona State makes them a sleeper that, like, everybody's talking about? Because, I mean, Washington could be up there even though they have a new coaching staff. So, I mean, what about the Pac-12 makes them, like, that? What about the rest of the teams in the Pac-12 that can make them seem like they can compete with Oregon? I just wanted to throw that out there because I'm pretty sure you watch a lot more Pac-12 than I do, me being on the East Coast.
Me being on the East Coast, watch a lot more Pac-12.
Yeah, me being on the East Coast, I'm not able to watch a lot of the Pac-12 games, and I'm pretty sure you pretty much might be able to catch a little bit more of them for the fact that you may stay up to watch some of those later Pac-12 games that come on like 12 or 11.
Yeah, I'm as far on the East Coast as anybody possibly can be. But still, I definitely watch a lot of Pac-12 football. I am up until the last football game is tucked away in bed on a Saturday night. So I am here watching Pac-12 college football until 2:30 in the morning. Yes, I am. So my thoughts about Arizona State is, number one, Herm Edwards has proven a lot of doubters wrong. He can run a college football program. There is no question about that. His recruiting has been stellar. He's starting to bring in recruits that were not brought in by Arizona State before. So the recruiting has been upgraded under Herm Edwards, and he is a true motivator, leader, CEO type. He's letting his offensive and defensive coordinators work those two sides of the football, and it's working to a certain extent. Now, the records for Arizona State for the past 2 years have only been 7-5, but I think what's encouraging to Arizona State fans and people looking for a sleeper in the Pac-12 is that Arizona State has shown in these two past seasons, and the most recent example is the game against Oregon, is that they can beat, when they are playing at their best, they can jump out, and they are the likely candidate to jump out and knock off the top team. Again, they were the one team in the Pac-12 that was able to outclass Oregon last year, and they did it the year before as well. not against Oregon, but they jumped out and beat some of the better teams in the Pac-12. Now, they did lose to some teams that they shouldn't have lost to, so that's the counter argument there. They also have Jaden Wilkins, who, of course, just made it through a freshman season. So he's gained a ton of experience and should be miles improved this year. And he was really good last year. So they've got a hotshot sophomore quarterback who's already got 13 games starting experience under his belt in Jaden Wilkins. And they've brought back most of their productivity on defense in the front seven. And they also play in a division that's possibly the weakest in college football, along with the ACC Coastal Division.
Man, what a shot! Wow, Mark. What a shot! Wow, Mark. Wow, what a shot! That was a little hurtful because I'm a Miami Hurricane fan. That was a little hurtful, Mark.
Well, can somebody tell me otherwise?
I can't disagree with you, man. I agree. The last thing I want to say, I'm going to hang up after this. This is the last one. So basically, so I was watching a couple of interesting tapes, and people were talking about Oregon. And a lot of people said that Oregon has the chance to be what Clemson, Alabama, and Ohio State are in their respective conferences in the Pac-12. Because right now, with the Pac-12 being down, Oregon is just so good at recruiting everybody else. Like, they're out recruiting the Pac-12 at like a normal pace. So with the downside of the Pac-12 and Oregon being on the up, if Oregon brings in some more talented recruiting classes in the next 3 years and they become a juggernaut in the Pac-12 to the fact like they end up being what Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson are to their respective conferences, and they dominate the Pac-12, do you think that could really end up happening, or do you think it's just like, do you think Oregon could really become like what Clemson and Ohio State are in their respective conferences, or do you feel like another team in the Pac-12 may be able to have something to say about that?
I think that Oregon can become the Clemson or Ohio State in the Pac-12. I think that they already are working toward that end. I think it's going to be difficult for them to be elite overall. So what I mean there is, to make the college football playoff is certainly a great accomplishment. But as we have seen with most notably Oklahoma in the Big 12, Washington the year they made it in 2016 out of the Pac-12, Michigan State, even though they played in a strong Big Ten, they were not the best team in the Big Ten that year, but they won the conference fair and square. Is that there is a big difference between making the college football playoff, maybe being that fourth best team in the country, and usually the fourth best team or the fourth team that makes the college football playoff isn't necessarily the fourth best team in the country. So there is a mile separation, a large separation between making the college football playoff and then being good enough to beat two of the best teams in the country to win a national championship. And that's where I think Oregon has to show me a whole lot more to be able to get into a college football playoff and win games in the playoff. Now, let's understand that things change rather quickly. While Oregon appears to be that team because they've brought in the two best recruiting classes in the Pac-12 the last 2 years, they just won the Pac-12. They just won the Rose Bowl. Stanford is down. Washington State just lost Mike Leach, so they might be down after winning 11 games 2 years ago. Washington loses Chris Peterson, so they appear to be sliding down, coming off a 7-5 regular season. That it looks prime for Oregon to take over the Pac-12. But just 4 years ago, we were looking at USC coming off top 5 recruiting classes in the nation, back-to-back years, all that offensive skill talent, winning a Rose Bowl, winning the Pac-12 the next year. They looked like, okay, USC's back. Then just a year or two after that, after overlapping that, Washington made the college football playoff in 2016, had the best record in the conference in 2017. And then in 2018, again, had another stellar season, went to the Rose Bowl, won the Pac-12. Then Washington was the best program in the Pac-12, and Chris Peterson had everything in play. And I certainly thought, and still do, that he's one of the top 5 coaches in America, even though he's not currently coaching. So things change rather quickly. And so now Oregon appears to be the team that's most primed to take over the Pac-12. And that's reasonable to think after what we've seen the last 2 years. But things change quickly.
Yeah. Well, Mark, I'm gonna let you go, man. Thanks for coming on, man. And it's a rumor going around in college football that LSU is still scoring touchdowns as we speak on Oklahoma.
Okay, we'll have to look into that. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. All right, we had a couple of people calling in. Please don't give up. Call us back. I was a little bit slow in the trigger. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, 860-325-3687. Talking college football here all the time, each and every day. This is our Sunday night call-in show, 10 p.m. Eastern time, so make it a habit. I'm not able to get them on speaker. Why can I stand by? There we go. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark Rogers. It's Ballard Sports Media. How you doing tonight?
Hey, Ballard. How are you?
I'm doing well. I wanted to get your thoughts on something.
Whoa. What's going on there?
That's been going through my head about college football lately. But there are a couple
Hey, Ballard, hang on. Whoa, hang on. Hello, Ballard. Are you listening to me? Hang on. Are you moving your phone around, or what are you doing? For some reason, there's a lot of.
I was walking around, but
we really can't hear you. There's a lot of static, a lot of scratchiness.
Is this better?
It is right now. Thanks.
Okay, my bad. Sorry about that.
No problem.
There are a couple coaches that have been hired recently that I'm really looking forward to seeing this year in 2020. Again, assuming we get a football season, because we still don't know. But I guess, is this year 3 for Jimbo Fisher with the Aggies? Or is
Yes.
it like year 2?
Year 3.
Year 3. Yeah. I'm
Okay, turn me off, Ballard. Hey, turn me down in the background. That's another problem.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah. I'm really high on a guy like Jimbo Fisher going into 2020. I think it's probably year 3 for him. I'm not sure exactly what it was with the team last year. Obviously, he took a step back. Not a big step, but I felt like it wasn't as, big for him in year 2 as it was year 1. Do you expect him to maybe get back to where he wants to be this year in 2020, or do you see a guy like Jimbo Fisher just declining with A&M? Because I don't see him declining. I think he could go forward a little bit this year. What do you think?
Okay, so I definitely agree with your analysis that it feels like they regressed last year. And the reason why, there are basically 2 reasons why it felt like that. Number one is that there was a lot of hype and attention given to Jimbo Fisher taking over the job, of course, in 2018. So what did he do? He went 9-4, which was an improvement. They won a bowl game over North Carolina State by a zillion points, like 52-13. So there was a lot of vibe and hype and attention coming into the offseason. His first offseason after an upgrade to 9 wins, big bowl win, looked good, looked impressive, great recruiting class, goes into 2019. But if you really look at the 2019 results, they're not much different than 2018, but we all expected the improvement to continue, number one. Number two, they did lose one more game, but let's consider basically they played the same that they did the year before. They lost to the same teams. They lost to Clemson out of conference, and they lost everybody that they lost to the year before in the SEC West. The only difference in their schedule was they picked up Georgia. So they had to go to Georgia on the road in 2019 as opposed to playing 2 cupcakes in the Eastern Division the year before. So they got Georgia added on the road, and they lost that game. So that was really the only difference.
Yeah, and you look at the fact, you look 2 years ago, the 7 overtime game with LSU in Kyle Field in College Station, as opposed to what we saw from Joe Burrow and LSU and everything, how dominant they were. Not only was LSU really good in the sense, that's why they lost him or anything, it was also in Death Valley, Tiger Stadium on the road, which is a very tough place to play. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. They did have the win over LSU in that crazy 74-72 game the year before.
That was awesome.
So there must have been a game in there that they lost that they didn't lose the year before. I'm trying to think who that would be. Maybe a Mississippi State or somebody. Anyway, regardless, they picked up Georgia. They lost to Georgia. That was basically the difference between the 8-5 and the 9-4, and they won a bowl game both times. And they beat a pretty decent Oklahoma State team in a bowl game. And now he's stacked 2 really good recruiting classes, top 10 recruiting classes on top of each other.
Absolutely.
The only hesitation to my thinking that Texas A&M is going to continue to ascend is just merely that they're sitting in the SEC Western Division with LSU and Alabama and Auburn to a lesser extent. If they were in any other division in college football, basically, I would give them a fighting chance of finishing first or second.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And I also have something else. I was on, I know you were on there pretty recently too, Uncle Lou, his morning show. I'm sure you're familiar with it.
I'm not a big early morning guy, so I'm only familiar with the 2 times that I've been on. But Uncle Lou does a great job. He's funny. He's does a great job. I love his channel. Don't get to see a whole lot just because I don't consume much, but love what he does. Yep.
Yeah, I was on his show one time, and I was talking about, because, I myself was trying to be a sportscaster, and we kind of got into talking about, people who, have gotten into the business and stuff. And, I brought up your channel, and I said, and this was no disrespect in any way. I love watching you, and I love what you do. And I said, you look at, and I said, like, if you love college football, who doesn't watch Mark Rogers? I know he's not at ESPN or anything, but he's very good at what he does. And Lou cut me off. He said, well, he is at ESPN. And I was curious, for someone like me who one day wants to work for ESPN, or at least just get into the sports, casting business, what was it like for you there, if you don't mind?
Okay, so this is my background. I don't know if I'm going to keep people's attention with this, but so it was always my goal once I reached high school to be a sportscaster. I wanted to be either a sports writer or a sportscaster. So I went to college with that in mind, and I majored in broadcast journalism. My first job out of college was as a news anchor and reporter at a small station in Ohio, and I was there for 3 years, and I did play-by-play on TV and radio for 3 years. We're talking Division II football, high school basketball, a lot of other things.
Local football and stuff?
Yeah, high school football, high school basketball, Division II, Ashland University, their Division II school, their football games. So I did that on the side in addition to being a news anchor reporter at a small station. So I was 22 years old. That's what I did. That was my first job out of college for 3 years. Then I went to Mississippi, and I was a sports director at a CBS station down there for 6 years. And we covered the SEC more than anything else. We were only 30 minutes away from Mississippi State. Ole Miss was in our territory, and Alabama. So I was consumed with Alabama, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State and the rest of the SEC. Went to College World Series games, bowl games, SEC championship games, Final Fours, the whole deal for 6 years. That's what I did. I was a sports director there at that CBS station, WCBI, for 6 years. Then I was out of the business, not for long, for about a year. and I got a job at ESPN, and I'm currently on the management team in production operations. So I've been a production operations management member for close to 19 years at ESPN. And I've also done digital work at ESPN. I did some freelance work at ESPN for a few years on their digital platform, did highlights, did voiceovers for Major League Baseball, the NFL, college football, for their highlight packages.
For like commercials and stuff? Or?
So basically what that was when they were starting digital media, which was kind of an afterthought in 2009, something in that range, 2010. The person that ran their digital department at the time contacted me. Somebody gave me their name. I don't know. Somebody gave them my name. They contacted me and said, I understand that you've got a resume and that you're a former sportscaster. And so I auditioned, and I also gave them my resume. They auditioned me. They liked what they saw. So they hired me as a freelance. So I was working at ESPN as an operations manager, but also as a freelancer. They were paying me to do work on their digital on ESPN.com. When I say digital, I mean ESPN.com. So I would come in on a particular night. Let's say there would be Major League Baseball, NBA, and NHL games, and I would shoot anchor intros, and then they would have a team of editors that would cut the highlights. And then as soon as the game was over, they would want to get those highlights with a voiceover package to ESPN.com to get it online. So they would feed me a shot sheet, what's called a shot sheet. Are you familiar with that? What a shot sheet is? A shot sheet is basically what a sports anchor uses to read off the highlights, but it's just filled with basic information. So it might say Yankees, Red Sox, first inning, Derek Jeter, RBI single, so-and-so scores, third inning, Yankees up 1-0, so-and-so hit a home run. But it's just all the information. And then if you're a decent sportscaster, you embellish with your own catchphrases and however you call the highlights. But that's called a shot sheet. It's basically shot by shot by shot by shot. So if there's 4 plays, you're going to have 4 on the shot sheet. So they bring me the shot sheet at the end of the game. I would voice over the highlights, go into a voice booth and into an audio booth and voice over the highlights. And then they would post it to .com. Over the course of time, they determined that it was much more functional and efficient to just take the highlights from SportsCenter and post them to .com rather than having a whole other crew produce the highlights and the voiceover. So that was my last shot at broadcasting for anyone else.
That's very interesting. I mean, and again, I don't know necessarily how far I'm going to get. I might get to ESPN, I might not, but I mean, and I even said this when I was on Lou's morning show. I said, even if it's like a small radio show or whatever, as long as I'm in the business, I'm probably really good. But anyway, I know I'm sure your lines are full or whatever, but appreciate you taking my call.
Well, this is the only thing I'll tell you, Ballard, as some advice is just get your reps in. You get in the batter's box, get your reps in. And obviously you have an advantage today, and everybody that wants to do it along with you has the advantage of the internet that we didn't have when I started. I'm an old guy. We didn't have the internet. You had to get an education. You had to get an internship, which I was fortunate enough to do twice to get the internship to build a resume tape. But now you can do all this yourself.
That is true. Yeah.
So there you go. I appreciate the phone call.
All right.
Good luck to you. All right. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Press 1 to start the call, or the call will.
Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, this is Cole.
Hey, Cole. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you? First off, OH.
Do you have anybody else there with you? They can fill that in?
No.
Okay.
Something you would, but okay. I just want to say, kind of old news, but what do you think about Mel Tucker being hired as Michigan State's head coach? I was looking into him not too long ago, and it doesn't seem like he has anything really standing out for him recently, especially with recruiting. And I'm just wondering what you might think about that, and if you know anything more about their thought process with that.
I'm not impressed. So that doesn't mean that Mel Tucker will not turn out to be a fine head coach for Michigan State and prove me wrong. But based on what he has accomplished to date, I posted a video as soon as he was hired. I both went live as soon as the announcement came down that he was hired. And then I posted a video so you can get a full like 12 or 14 minutes out of me talking about Mel Tucker and my thoughts about the situation Michigan State put itself in. I believe they just ran out of candidates, and the people that they really, starting with Luke Fickell, really targeted, turned them down, and they got a little bit desperate. And he was at least a guy that has proven that he can run a program, at least for one season. And so they overstretched, they overreached, and they had to offer him a ton of money, and he's making way too much money. But they got a little bit desperate, and they ran and chased him down, even though he turned them down initially, but they sweetened the pot both for him and his assistant coaches that he brought in, and gave him more money to hire assistants and pay them, because I think that they just got themselves into a position where maybe the job wasn't as big or as glamorous as they thought it was. And they went after Mel Tucker. And I think he's in a tough spot in that division with the lack of talent in the state of Michigan. I think he's in a difficult place. And considering what Mark D'Antonio built and what he delivered, at least from 2010 through 15, 16, 17, in that range, it's going to be difficult for Mel Tucker to live up to Mark D'Antonio's standards. Very difficult.
Not if you go with the D'Antonio standard of 3-9 that one season.
Well, that was
2018.
That was one season. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I know.
One season.
Yeah, so he had that like one-off season, but I mean, I just don't know if he's gonna be able to compete. I feel like Michigan State might just fall down into kind of that, not as bad as Rutgers, but kind of be that kind of like write-off game where any team like Ohio State or Penn State or even the team up north is just kind of going to be like that, roll in there and just kind of roll all over them and just walk out with a W.
If you look at Michigan State's football program from, and I'm going to take it back to the time that I started watching college football in the late 70s. If you go from the late 70s up until Mark D'Antonio, it was a marginal football program. Aside from winning a Rose Bowl in 1988, aside from finishing in the top 10 in 1999, their winning percentage is like 55%. A lot of 6-5, 7-5s. That's been Michigan State football. Mark D'Antonio found a way to do much better than that, but that's what Michigan State's been. And unless Mel Tucker is a much better coach than I give him credit for right now, and maybe he is, I expect Michigan State to be competing for postseason play, that to be their bar in the next 5 to 10 years. 6-6, 7-5.
Yeah, and I don't really see the reasoning behind Mel Tucker, aside from what you said, running out of candidates, when you have, like you had Urban Meyer for the past 7 years. You had Ryan Day now, who's proven he's a much better coach than a lot of people gave him credit for at the very beginning of his kind of head coaching career. And then you have James Franklin, and even though he's not, in my opinion, living up to the standards that he's been given, Jim Harbaugh. And it's just like, I don't see Mel Tucker doing too much because, in my opinion, he doesn't really have the experience to do it. He didn't come into Colorado and make them compete compete in the Pac-12. They just kind of stayed where they were.
Yeah, and to be fair to him, that was only one season.
That's true. That's true. But you see, and he didn't do all that great, but Mike Locksley, who was the head coach at the University of New Mexico, I think it was,
Yes.
won one season every game. Then he went to be the offensive coordinator at Alabama somehow. And now he's the head coach of Maryland, and Maryland isn't doing too bad recruiting-wise. And he kind of had a couple free seasons because it's Maryland.
Yeah, well, we're kind of shifting from Tucker to Locksley, but again, I want people not to necessarily get me wrong here. I'm not saying that Mel Tucker is not a good football coach. I'm saying that he has not had the opportunity to show that he's a game changer, and Michigan State needs a game changer, because I think that they're going to regress back to what they were for the 40 years prior to Mark D'Antonio, and what they had become his last 3 or 4 years as well, which again was, as you mentioned, 3-9, 10-3, 7-6, 7-6. They've been a slightly better than 500 football team for the past 4 seasons. That it's difficult to recruit there. They're stuck in a tough division with elite teams. I just think it's going to be a difficult go for Mel Tucker, but maybe he's the next D'Antonio. Maybe he's something else. Maybe he's PJ Fleck, and I just don't know it yet.
That's kind of the comparison I was trying to make between Mel Tucker and Mike Locksley. Mike Locksley has some background with being successful in college football, whereas Mel Tucker kind of doesn't.
What is
kind of like that.
Now, see, I was going to go the other direction there, Cole. I was going to go that we don't know much about Tucker. We can't really necessarily be optimistic nor pessimistic. We just have to wait and see. We've got 1 year as a head man at Colorado, and they went 5-7, and that's what you would reasonably think that Colorado team would do, go 5-7. And whatever their record was in the Pac-12, it must have been 4-5. So for Locksley basically was a disaster at New Mexico. They were awful. And he even screwed up off the field there, did a lot of stupid things. Like, I don't know how he got this Maryland job. I don't understand that, other than he is was an assistant there, and he had a pretty good run, or they had a decent run while he was there, and he has ties to the program and to the area. But other than that, I don't know what he did to earn that job.
I think it's the thing that he was the offensive coordinator at Alabama, and that was enough for the University of Maryland to say, well, he's had some success, even though I'm sure, unless they're complete idiots, they looked up his record and saw that he went 3-33 at the UNM.
Which, again, you got to understand the context and the circumstances and the personnel and the program that he was given. I didn't expect him to go, win 10 games a year, but over the course of 3 seasons, you should see some level of improvement. And he did nothing there but regress. And again, he did a lot of stupid things off the field that I outline in this video that are not necessarily what I would be looking for in hiring a head football coach. And to be the offensive coordinator at Alabama and to be successful, maybe you or I could do that.
Yeah, and I don't see anything with that. Mel Tucker, I mean, you did mention he had a much better record than Mike Locksley had at UNM, but I don't know. I honestly didn't even know who Mel Tucker was until I actually looked it up. Because I just wondered one day, I was like, did Michigan State hire another head coach? And then they did, and I was like, who the heck is this guy? Yeah,
he was at Colorado for 1 year, and he was at Georgia as an assistant before that.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of Southern bias, not just in what people think with the college football playoff committee, but in college football in general. If you have someone from the SEC, but like Georgia, Florida, or Alabama, Auburn, you might think, oh, they're at a very successful program, and what some people may argue is the best conference in college football. And they just think, well, that person's going to be a great head coach or a great assistant. And I think that's mainly because Kirby Smart went from Alabama to Georgia, and you see what he's done at Georgia.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right,
Anything
Mark.
else, Cole?
No, that's it. Thanks for talking with me. Thanks for giving me your time, and I'll talk to you later, I guess.
Absolutely. We appreciate it.
For calling again.
Have a good one.
Have a good night, Mark.
You too. Bye-bye. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We post videos each and every day, and over the next several days, you are going to be inundated with NFL draft previews. So please dive in. We have most notably brought in crap. I keep doing that. And once I hit the wrong, see if we can get us there. Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hi, what's up? And how you doing?
I'm doing just fine. You cut out there at the beginning. That was my fault. Who is this on the line?
This is the End Zone on YouTube.
The End Zone.
I had two quick questions for you.
Absolutely. So tell us about your
first of all-
YouTube channel. So you got a YouTube channel, The End Zone.
Yeah, you actually inspired me to make my own channel. I've got like 12K subscribers right now. I just talk about football.
The End Zone. You're coming up on me here. You're going to blast past me on the subscribers. Nice job.
No, I don't know about that. But I just wanted to ask you two quick questions. You talk about ranking coaches. Do you have a ranking of top, 5 coaches who haven't won a national championship in college football landscape?
That are coaching right now that have not won a national championship.
Correct.
No Saban, no
Yep.
Brown, no Fisher, no Miles, no Swinney. Top 5 coaches. So basically, if I'm starting a team right now, so I don't care how good they were. So I used to use this line years ago when I was looking at Bowden and Paterno and more recently Spurrier to say, hey, the resume, the track record, the legacy is huge, but would I want them coaching my team right now? So I'm going to discount some of that. So Kyle Whittingham's great. Mario Cristobal's good. Lincoln Riley's really good. Ryan Day, I'm thinking here. So my top 5 right now, and people out there, forgive me if I miss anybody, and you can correct me, but right now, I'll spit them out, then I'll order them. I think the top 5 coaches in college football right now are Lincoln Riley, Ryan Day, Kyle Whittingham, I'm going to go with Dan Mullen and Kirby Smart. I am thinking hard about, I really like PJ
I was thinking
Fleck.
like Brian Kelly kind of in there just because
Brian Kelly? Okay.
he's been at Notre Dame a long time. He was pretty good at Cincinnati.
Sure.
But yeah. And then another question. I don't know if you've seen Alabama's 2021 recruiting class.
Yep.
But it's not very good. It's ranked in like the 30s. Like Kansas is in front of it. I know 2021, it might be far away and stuff, but
Yes.
But what do you think about that? Like, you're not used to seeing Bama all the way back there in the recruiting ranking.
Okay. It's been my experience not to think anything of it right now. I don't think there are records out there to back this up that we would be able to go back to April of 2019 or 18 and look at the recruiting classes or the standings right then to compare them to the way they finished. But I'm almost positive that if you look at the recruiting ranking, but then you also look at the number of commitments, the number of commitments is going to be low. So their average ranking per commitment is still high. Alabama is a late run at these recruiting rankings, more so than Ohio State. Ohio State looks like Ryan Day is going to follow in the footsteps of Urban Meyer of trying to wrap up a class early and protect it rather than make late runs at guys the way Nick Saban has. I would be stunned I'll go on record as saying being stunned if Nick Saban doesn't bring in a top 10 recruiting class in 2021. Stunned.
All right, yeah. Yeah, I was thinking also like North Carolina. Someone earlier on the show was talking about North Carolina. They've got a good recruiting class in that 2021. I believe they're ranked highly too. So
Yes.
I feel like Mac Brown does some building over there in the ACC.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, that's all I got today. Hope you have a great night, and I'll keep on the live stream, keep watching.
All right, the End Zone. We'll be looking out for you. We appreciate you joining us tonight.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Guy jumped on a YouTube channel. I don't want to try to guess his age. He sounds rather young, but see, this is what's amazing about this day and age. I don't want to say how old I am, but certainly, like I was talking to Ballard Sports Media there a few minutes ago about, hey, when I was coming through the process, what you basically needed to do was you needed to go to college. You needed to hopefully get an internship. And I was fortunate enough at that time to get an internship with an ABC station that no longer exists in Akron, Ohio. Maybe I'm part of their demise. ABC station in Akron, and get on the air. And actually, most interns built their resumes, and they were kind of fake resumes, meaning this stuff didn't actually air. They just would have the cameraman shoot them doing stand-ups and anchor performances at the desk that didn't air. But fortunately, I was able to get on the air, a friend of mine and myself, and then I did a second internship, and where they were really comfortable with me at that point, do a second internship my final semester in college and build an actual resume tape. You don't need to do that now. Get the internet. And you can live stream all day. You can cut videos. You can do the whole deal and show people what you can do. It's awesome. It's amazing. Tim Foster, thank you so much for the Super Chat contribution. Once I get to your spot in the live chat, I will post this. Earlier today, and again, yes, Tim Foster, thank you so much. I appreciate the contribution right there. Earlier today, this was, anytime this happens, I cannot in any reasonable way voice my appreciation enough. Colton Doyle sent me a contribution, and whoever's calling me, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to decline the phone call right now. Please call back because I'm in the middle of this. Colton Doyle sent me a contribution on Venmo. So I've left the link to my Venmo account and PayPal down in the description section of any of the videos. So go there and you can contribute directly to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And Colton writes here, and I'm sorry, give me a second here, please. You know what? I'll answer the phone call, and then what you can do is you'll just have to listen to me go on about this. All right, here it is. Colton Doyle writes, hey, Mark, love the content and want to help you make this a full-time gig. So last night what I did was I shot a 42-minute video and posted that on our Patreon page to our current patrons to basically say, here's the vision, here's the goal, here's the purpose, this is why we're here, this is what we're doing, this is the goal, the dream, the vision, this is it. And maybe Colton saw that, I don't know. Been a fan for a while. I've never heard from Colton before, but I so much appreciate this comment and the contribution here that he sent me on Venmo. Hey, Mark, love the content. Want to help you make this a full-time gig. Been a fan for a while now and finally getting around to donating. Keep up the great work, man. So thank you so much, Colton, and thank you, Mr. Foster, for the contribution here. All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's George.
Hey, George, what's going on, man? I've got your post on the screen right now. Your way too early predictions for next year's playoffs. Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson, and then somebody else.
I was calling to ask for what do you think?
So you've got Florida and Georgia both making it from the same division.
Imagine how exciting that rolls out. It can be done, by the way.
It can be done. Yes, it can be done, but you've got two marks against you automatically. Of course, they play.
We just have all we have to do is win every other game, and one of us lose to each other. Next.
Okay, but you're going to be sitting out of the. So basically, let's.
Georgia beats Alabama, Florida beats LSU, and we do it. So what's next? Ohio State, you can do it. And what's that other team I named? Clemson. Goddamn Clemson.
All right, let's get back to your scenario here. Let's say Georgia beats you. Okay.
Right.
Then they go on to win the SEC championship game against Alabama. Okay, they're in the clubhouse. They're good. You are sitting there at 11-1, and you beat LSU. Okay, in the regular season. And you think that's going to be enough? Okay, it can happen. I'm just saying the two difficult points to navigate are you've got a team that doesn't make a championship game in the conference, and we've seen that happen a couple times. So it's been done. And then also you play each other, so there's automatically a black mark on one of you. But it can happen.
I know.
It has yet to happen with two teams in the same division.
It would be extreme, but you can easily envision it. It could easily happen.
It can happen.
This
What else?
is delusional coronavirus thinking,
Delusional.
I'm like, if we did have another season, it's possible that Georgia could beat Alabama and Florida could beat LSU, and it's on. And then you can just see how that goes. They're all like undefeated except for that one loss. Oh my God! And Oklahoma's already done lost to Texas, and Oregon sucks again.
Oregon sucks again.
Yeah, I live here, man. I couldn't believe it. When I came here and they told me there was a football team named the Ducks, I'm like, that. It took me like 3 years before I believed them. And then it turns out there really is a team named the Ducks.
You know what I wish you would do, George?
What?
I wish you would give me a piece of your mind.
Well, let's talk about the Beavers. I mean, I thought the Ducks was funny. And Beaver is what we used to use as a joke referencing women's genitalia when I was a kid.
Yes, I'm well aware of that.
Like,
sure.
Somebody named their football team a Beaver.
Well, the football team was the athletic program was named way before. I don't know when that nickname in regarding women came into play.
I have nothing against Beavers. I love Beaver, but no, I wouldn't name my football team that.
You wouldn't now, but again, they were doing this back in maybe 1910.
So anyway, I'm thinking Florida. Look, Alabama probably. I should have probably said Alabama first because nothing's really changed. But damn it, I want to take Georgia out of my guess and just put Alabama in there. Alabama, Florida, Ohio State, and Clemson. That's my way too early guess.
Yeah, it's too early, but that's okay. That's what people like to hear. They like predictions. People love predictions.
What's your way too early guess? Can you do better than that? That's a pretty good guess.
Well, how do we know who can do better than what? They've actually got to go out there and play the games before we know who can do better than that. I can say right now I
think Ohio State has the best coaching staff. They're really holding the team together, and I think Florida does. And those other teams I named, I think they all do. I think they're holding their shit together.
I love your insight, George, that you know that the Ohio State coaching staff is holding the team together right now.
Right, because that's what I expect of Florida. And Ohio State's kind of a big-time program. Urban Meyer, oh my God, he's like God, isn't he? All he has to do is take a whip through your program and you're set.
Well, he's not around anymore, George.
Yeah, he is. He's going to USC.
Oh, is that what's going to happen? All right, George.
Can you even imagine that if Urban Meyer actually did something like that? The Pac-12 could get back in the playoffs.
I would be fascinated to see Urban Meyer at USC. I just think not for any other reason that it would be fascinating to see what he would do at USC, because the track record says he would get that program in shape and they would be owning the Pac-12 soon. like
I'm
next
a
year?
Southeastern Conference guy, and I lived in the Pac-12 for like 20 years now, and I really feel sorry for them. And that's the difference maker. You need Urban Meyer. You need somebody. You just got to have Vince Lombardi. Because there's no excuse. He would do it in like 2 years, win the national title.
Probably. Well, he would
Yeah.
compete for one. All right, folks, whomever out there, I know there's a number of people that have been calling and stacking up the phone lines, so please call back. George, what else have you got for us?
I just wanted to say, I have nothing to say. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to talk about the coronavirus. I'll just let it go.
Please do. All right, George.
I was going to make some kind of smart-ass remark.
Okay.
I'm just not even going to do it.
All right, next time. All right, George.
Love you guys.
Have a good night. Appreciate it. All right. George was going to make a smart-ass remark. He was going to. He refrained this time. GM. Maybe that would be interesting to try and see if we could find the time. And I don't know if Steve would be interested in doing that or not, but that would be a heck of a show, I believe.
The call will start at the beep.
It's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, who's on the line. And when I say that would be an interesting endeavor, I'm talking about the post that I just put on the screen there from GM, who says if Mark and Steve, meaning Steve Dace, had a syndicated show, it would be awesome. Thank you so much, GM. I appreciate that, and I believe it would be. All right, who we've got on the line here?
How's it going, Mark? It's Graham.
Hey, Graham, how are you?
Good. Mention the name Steve Dace. That irritates me when I watch the shows.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. We're having trouble hearing you, Graham. What did you say about Steve
Can you
Dace?
hear me right now?
Yeah, we got you.
I said it irritates me watching his shows. Those debating the Ohio State, Michigan.
Yeah, you don't like those, huh?
A
lot of people do.
Well, no. Him and Ari Wasserman were going back and forth about the talent difference and stuff, and Steve was kind of saying, I don't know, he's putting it in his words, but explaining it, and it just didn't really, no. But, anyways, I was calling to ask you, like, who do you think's got the best chance to win the SEC this year? I think it's going to be more wide open than usual because
I agree.
Alabama, I wouldn't say for sure has a great quarterback, but then Georgia's got Jamie Newman.
So I believe that Alabama's got the best team of proven players on both sides of the ball. I think Georgia's right there. I don't know how good Jamie Newman is. If he was able to put up the stats that he did at Wake Forest, he's obviously going to be playing against much better teams, but he's also going to be surrounded by much better talent. And now to see Kirby Smart's offense with a mobile quarterback is going to be interesting to see if they approach things differently. And Florida has slowly closed the gap on the field.
Yeah.
Not in the recruiting rankings, but on the field they have. They played a much better game last year than they did the year before. And Florida didn't have that screw-up game that they did the year before. They pretty much played a clean schedule and lost to the teams that you would expect them to lose to.
Actually, if it was coming from me, I would say I don't think anybody's recruited better than Georgia in the last 2 or 3 years.
Sure.
Agreed. Kirby Smart has just hit home run after home run. It's just that he can't keep his hands off the playbook, and that's holding them back. And letting go of Justin Fields.
Yeah, that's certainly a valid point. If they would have had Justin Fields last year, I don't know that they would have beaten LSU, but they might have avoided a South Carolina loss and maybe made the playoff.
Yeah, that was. I'm an Ohio State fan. That South Carolina loss, it reminded me of a couple games.
Sure. Yeah, a couple recent ones, one in West Lafayette and one in Iowa City. Sure.
Yeah, it wasn't that ugly, but it was just like it.
Yeah. Well, that South Carolina team wasn't as good, maybe as good as the Purdue team, but not as good as the team at Iowa that won 8 games.
Well, I felt Nate Stanley played maybe the best game of his career against us that day.
Mm-hmm. He's capable on occasion.
He is, and I'm pretty sure that before this past season started, wasn't he like maybe projected to be a first-round pick, at least high second round?
Well, from the time he stepped on campus, he had a huge arm and and he's got a big body, big build. He looks like an NFL quarterback to be able to make all the throws, and he looks like an NFL quarterback. He just hasn't developed and gotten any better. We did a quarterback rundown with the NFL Draft Bible guy, our guy Rick Saratella. So I'll give him a little plug here. NFL Draft Bible, Rick Saratella. We had him on. We analyzed the quarterbacks, and he hears a lot of bad things about Nathan Stanley's lack of dedication and preparation. He just kind of goes out there and wings it.
That's unfortunate. Since I know you're an Ohio State fan too, I wanted to kind of go back a couple of years. The 2018 season when Ohio State played TCU. Was it just me, or do you not think that TCU team was going to go on to do great things that year after that game?
Well, if all you did is show Ohio State and what they accomplished that year, of course, they won the Rose Bowl, went 13-1, won the Big Ten. And then if you sat down and watched the TCU game and just said, how good is TCU? We know Ohio State went 13-1 and won the Rose Bowl. How good is this TCU team? Because as you know, it was back and forth. It was until Ohio State made some plays in the fourth quarter. What was the final? 40-28, I believe. That was like I forget what the score was, but they had like a 21-12 lead in that game. So they look like a much better team, and then they end up going 7-6.
Did they go 7-6? I didn't even know if they were above 500.
They went 5-7 this last year, but that year they went 7-6. They beat Cal in the Cheez-It Bowl.
All right. But then that quarterback they had, what was his name? Sean Robinson?
Yes, he then transferred, but Sean Robinson, yes. He was a 4-star.
Yeah, I thought that kid had a bright future after that game. I was like, you know what, this team's going to be really good. And then he ended up transferring, and I believe the Ohio State transfer Baldwin is going to be competing for the starting job now this year.
Yes.
At TCU.
Yep. Matt Baldwin.
He ends up winning the job there.
That's a good question. I would have to look at the rest of their. I thought they had somebody else that had some experience in there that transferred. Yeah, I'm a little off guard on that one. I don't remember TCU's quarterbacking situation. They had like they've been really bad at quarterback for the last 2 years and tried all sorts of guys. They've played 3 and 4 quarterbacks the last 2 years, and none of them have been very good. But I thought that they got somebody else in there.
I think they got Duggar coming back. I believe it's his last name.
Well, yeah, he's back. Dugan. Yeah.
Duggan.
Yeah.
Dugan, yeah.
But I thought somebody else had transferred in there.
Then I want to get your take. So my take on quarterbacks right now is pretty much, like Ohio State just brought in 2 good quarterbacks in the same class. My take is whichever one doesn't win the job is going to transfer, and I think that's how it's going to be across the country for quarterbacks. If you don't win the job, you're going to have an opportunity to go somewhere else and start, so you're going to do it.
Sure. Well, based on the conversations that we've had on our Ohio State live stream in recent weeks about the two quarterbacks in camp behind Justin Fields, there's no real thought to one of them being significantly better than the other. There's a pretty large gap between their recruiting rankings, though. So I did ask that question.
I think Stroud was a borderline 5-star. I believe he's the number 2 pro style.
Yes.
If you watch his highlights, he can actually run. Yeah, I think Jack Miller, before he got, I believe he got hurt his junior year. Didn't play at all his junior year. Something like that. I think he was the top 100 player before that, and he dropped drastically.
Yep. So I'm looking at TCU's quarterbacking depth chart, and basically it looks like it's coming down to Max Dugan, the kid that we're talking about, and they've got a JUCO transfer, dual threat quarterback Brandon Coleman from Trinity Valley. They're competing for the job. All right.
With Baldwin.
Anything else, Graham?
No, that's it. I appreciate it, Mark.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. You have a good night.
Yeah, you too.
It's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We've got our next call coming in.
Or 2 to decline.
And also, again, wanted to note that we've got a ton of NFL draft coverage coming up. I think we lost that call for whatever reason. So TCU's quarterbacking battle this year, Max Dugan, who's got decent level of experience, but his numbers aren't good. And then the JUCO transfer, Brandon Coleman. All right. I love the subject that was brought up to me by DeAndre. If you're on the line, let me know that you're listening tonight. DeAndre loves to dive into the archives, loves to bring up certain college football seasons and maybe give us a different perspective or ask me to give my take on maybe the way things played out versus the way things should have played out. So the 1983 national championship was the famous Miami win over Nebraska. As a 17-point underdog, Nebraska was hailed to have one of the great teams in college football history at that point. They were undefeated. Again, a 17-point favorite. And Miami pulled off the upset and rose from number 5 in the polls all the way up to number 1 to win the national championship. Auburn lost one game, had a very difficult schedule, beat Michigan in the Sugar Bowl that year. Texas and Georgia. Texas was undefeated, but lost to Cotton Bowl by 1 point to Georgia, who only had one loss as well. So DeAndre was asking me who should have won the national championship. So I know I was there. I watched all the games. I remember the scenarios and the records and everything, but I want to dig a little deeper, kind of run through the schedules and figure it out and really play out 1983 to say this is what happened. This is probably what should have happened. This is what it would have looked like during the BCS era, and this is what it would have looked like had it been played now. That's 1983. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
How you doing, Mr. Rogers? My name is Willis, a.k.a. Big Will. I've been a fan of your YouTube chat for many, many years, sir.
Big Will. It's nice to hear from you, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You know, I'm a Hurricane fan. I just love your content on Wednesday night with you and Mr. Cam Underwood.
There you go.
My favorite host.
Cam's awesome.
Yes, sir. Yes. Yes, sir. My question tonight, sir, is that due to the epidemic situation that's going around the country and by spring practice being canceled because of this epidemic, what is the chances for the Hurricanes to have a successful season in the 2020-21 season?
Well, I think one big key is going to be what they do about this offensive approach. So Rhett Lashley takes over for Dan Enos, and they want to install a new offense, but without having spring practice, they're going to have to determine, okay, are we going to have to dial back and go with what these kids know from last year's offense? And even though that's not what we ultimately want to do, is it going to be safer for us to go forward with the style of offense and a lot of the plays and terminology that we would have, that was installed before, that they're comfortable with? Or are they going to be capable of revamping an offense just in August to get ready for the season? I think that's a big determination right there. I don't know what the answer is, but they're going to have to figure out what the answer is. I would think that it's somewhere in between, that they're going to be able to install their concepts as the season unfolds, but they're going to have to make sure that the offense is comfortable, and they don't have the time that they would have had with 15 sessions during the spring and the summer individual workouts and all that to get everybody on the same page. Fortunately, they have a veteran quarterback in De'Ara King, not a veteran there, so his teammates have to get comfortable with him, and he's got to get comfortable with the terminology in the new system, but at least he has a wealth of experience under his belt.
Okay, awesome. Also, I have another question about Rep Lashley, because he has assembled this offensive staff. What is the percentage that you think that this offensive staff will be able to relate to the speed of the players here at Miami?
Okay, let's see if I understand this. What percentage?
What percentage I'm saying the style, what is the percentage that the kids will relate, and how much percentage that they will be able to relate to the speed and the athleticism of the kids here at the University of Miami? So what I'm saying is, basically, do you think that 50, 60% that they will be able to infrastructure the scheme and play offense to the athletes here, and they would be able to get it down, let's say probably 30, 35%, maybe 40?
Because of the time off?
Yes, sir.
Well, like I said, I think that they need to make a determination, and we're not going to know this right now because we don't know what the season's going to look like and how much time is going to be. Well, the one thing I think we can somewhat assume is that regardless of when the season starts, the coaches and the athletic staffs are going to demand that they are given the same amount of prep time leading into the season. So they're going to have the same amount of at least August camp, so 4 weeks to get ready for game one. I don't think that they're going to determine that they've got enough time, because they didn't have the off season with the individual workouts in the summer, spring practice, and even before that, these kids get on campus right after the season ends. The previous season ends, and they get on campus in January, and they have workouts. So they didn't have any. They had that, but I don't know at what point De'Ara King was there. It was a while after that before he determined that he was going to transfer. And so I don't have an answer to your question exactly, except for that's the big dilemma. Do you install a new offense and force it down their throats, or do you wait? And you should have an upgraded quarterback, a kid that's more dynamic with his legs and is going to make less mistakes. That's his track record. So you should automatically have an improved offense, even if you run a similar offense, just based on the quarterback play being upgraded.
Okay. All right. Because the reason why I asked, because basically, even though through the pandemic dilemma in the situation, and one thing about this throughout the year. They've been showing a lot of videos of all-season workouts by the players themselves, but that's just on their own training. And the reason why I asked that, because even though they're doing all these off-season workouts on their own and trying to be prepared and get ready for the season, just in case if we have a season, I'm just asking if they're going to be able, when the coaches and them get together after their train out and workouts and things, and when they do start to have practice, will they be able to get the schemes and parameters of the offense down? Not only the offense, the defense itself, because the defense also have to learn the speed of the spread offense. So, that's why I asked that question. How much percentage do you think that he's gonna be able to gain? But like you said, you don't know. You don't want to put a percentage on it because right now it's not for sure. And I thank you for giving me that insight and that content on there.
Well, let me also say this.
That,
Hey, Big Will, let me also say this, that I can think of a number of times in the past where new offensive coordinators have come into programs with the entire offseason, and they've even determined in August, this team hasn't handled this. This offense hasn't been able to handle this change. And they determined it before that. They determined it sometime in the spring, and they even determined, hey, we're going to roll this out slowly in the fall, and we're going to, do the same thing. So we've even seen that determination made even with a full off season. And so I would think that it's not like they're just going to say, we've got to roll with Dan Enos's offense because that's all these kids know and we don't have enough time. They will make changes. They will do what they want to do to a certain extent, but they want the offensive players to be comfortable, and especially the quarterback, and everybody to be on the same page.
Okay, sir. So by your own terminology, can you give me a prediction just in case if the season started on time? Can you give me a prediction of their season, what they will be, 9-4, 10-3? Can you give me a perception?
Well, I'm not going to predict any postseason games because I don't know who they're playing. I know that they've got these 12 regular season games, and off the top of my head, so they're playing, of course, Florida State in the other division, and this year they're playing Wake Forest. And then, of course, they got the Coastal. They've got a trip to Michigan State, which I think they should be able to go up there and win. But it's not going to be easy, but they should win that game. Temple's a pretty formidable first game. So I got to say that this team should go 6-2 in the conference, and maybe they trip up out of conference, but I'm looking at 9-3.
Okay. So if they go to a bowl, you think they will be able to win the bowl game, or do you just want to toss that up and you just don't know?
I have no idea at this point. I don't know who they're going to play. It's going to be determined. Think of it this way: Clemson almost assuredly is going to go to the playoff. So the loser of the ACC championship game, much like last year, is going to play a very difficult game in the Orange Bowl. So if they're able to go to the ACC title game like Virginia played a top 10 Florida team, that's a pretty tough assignment in the Orange Bowl. But let's say North Carolina wins the ACC Coastal, then they really drop down to the what used to be called the Russell Athletic Bowl, whatever they call that now in Orlando. The Camping World Bowl.
Right.
So that would be the next one down. So that would be a much easier assignment.
All right. Okay, Mr. Rogers, that's all I wanted to know. I've been calling. I'm happy that I was able to get you, sir. And, I love my Canes. I'm a diehard Cane fan, and I'm hoping that they have a wonderful season this year. I'm with you. I'm thinking that they will go 9-3 in the season. I'm hoping that they will win their bowl game. That's what I'm hoping. But, I'm with you. I see a 9-3 season at the end of this year.
Yep. All right. That's what I see right now. That's not my official prediction, but that's how I see it right now. All right, Big Will.
Yes, sir. All right. Thank you, Mr. Rogers.
Thank you so much for the support. I appreciate it. You have a good night.
You too, sir. You too.
All right. You guys that have been watching me for some time know that I like to be factual. I like to clear up debates if they're out there, because that's why we're here. And I'm going to take this call, but please hang on. So what I see in the live chat are some comments made about winning percentages in college football. Let's clear a few things up here. So somebody made the comment that Texas A&M has a better record over the last several years than Wisconsin. That is not correct. Kevin Sumlin went 11-2 the Johnny Manziel year in 2012 that he won the Heisman. Then he went 9-4 the next year, and the other years were 8-5. And Jimbo's lost 4 and 5 games his 2 years. And if you want to go before Kevin Sumlin, Texas A&M was 7-5, 8-4, basically ad nauseum before that, almost every year. Wisconsin's been better than that. So I guarantee that Wisconsin has a better winning percentage than Texas A&M over the last 5 years, 10 years, fill in the blank. Now I see from Todd, who, man, Todd, we love you here, but I got to correct this as well. Todd, you're stating here that Wisconsin is the 4th best winning percentage of all time? Todd. Now, I knew this not to be true, but I looked it up just to verify it. Okay, Wisconsin right now has the 33rd best winning percentage in the history of college football. So unless you can clarify what years you're looking at, and I don't think you can look at any years in which Wisconsin is the 4th best winning percentage, but certainly not of all time. They're number 33. All right, let's get to the call. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's DeAndre. How you doing, man?
Hey, DeAndre. I don't let people get away with that stuff.
Well, it's kind of interesting. How in the world did y'all get on Texas A&M in Wisconsin? I must have missed that part.
I don't know why the comparison there. I don't know why the comparison there between Wisconsin and Texas A&M, but that was that. I don't know if you heard me a few minutes ago. I'm intrigued by you bringing up 1983.
Oh, yeah. Honestly, it came about, I was just at work, just chilling, and I happened to come across that game between Auburn and Miami in the fall of '84, the beginning of the season kickoff classic up in MetLife Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that Auburn should have been at least a split champion that year. And I went and looked it up. Texas was lost to Georgia in the Cotton Bowl. Nebraska lost to Miami, of course. But I don't know how you really pick who should have been champion.
It's
and
tough.
I guess that's why they was playing that particular game that year early in the season.
Well, it's tough. So look at it this way, DeAndre, and this is how I'll attack it when I do a video on it. I'm going to line it up the way it was, but I'm also going to take the situation in the context of what it would have looked like in the BCS era and what most likely would have happened, and then also bring it up to the playoff era to see what would have happened. Also consider this. Illinois. Now, I'm not putting Illinois in the class of those other teams because they went out to the Rose Bowl and got shellacked. But they were 10-1 in the Big Ten. They did win the Big Ten at 10-1. And if they weren't locked into going to the Rose Bowl, where they had to go to the Rose Bowl and play a UCLA team that was, get this, 6-4-1. They won the Pac-12 at 6-4-1. And then they just killed Illinois 45-9. But that Illinois team was 10-1. They beat 2 top 10 teams, Michigan and Ohio State. I can't think of the game that they lost. I'd have to look that up. I don't remember. Maybe it was against Iowa. Iowa was good too. But anyway.
Right, Chuck Young, yeah.
Exactly. Illinois was 10-1. So if this was the BCS era, they would have had a heyday with that year, or a college football playoff, because think, Nebraska would be in the Big Ten. They would have played Illinois during the regular season, so most likely they would have shellacked them. But Nebraska would have had to play a Michigan or Ohio State, most likely Michigan. Michigan beat Ohio State head-to-head that year. in the Big Ten championship game. Texas would have won the Big 12, and Auburn and Georgia would have played in the SEC championship game. So there's a lot of ways to look at this. So I'm going to try to put it in the context of what actually happened and what could have happened, and then look at the BCS era, look at the college football playoff era. Because if he would have had the BCS, it would have been a clear-cut Texas-Nebraska national championship game because they were both undefeated. They were the only two undefeated teams.
Wow. And Mark, I'm looking at that schedule.
Yeah.
That you talk about Illinois right now.
Yeah.
Illinois lost to Missouri.
That's right. That's right.
But check this out. Iowa was number 4 in the nation that year, and they beat them 33-0.
I remember that game.
I know Chuck Young was there.
Yep, Chuck.
And they beat
Chuck
like
Long.
you said, number 6 and number 8 Michigan.
They beat Ohio State. I certainly remember that game. What was the Ohio State game? Was like 17-13, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The I-Buck trophy. But like I said, that baffles me because I mean, like I said, I wasn't looking to bash Miami fans. I know people say I give Miami a hard time, but I don't know why Osborne. Now that I look at the situation, why didn't they go? Why did they go for 2? All they had to do is keep the extra point, and they would have been 11-0-1.
Oh, they would have won the national championship.
Yeah.
Sure. Especially since they came back in that game. They were down by 2 touchdowns in the second half, and they came back. So I think people look at that differently and say, well, you came back and tied it. And they were considered, I don't know if you remember that year, they were considered just unstoppable. They were a 17-point favorite in that game. So, yeah, they would have been, everybody would have voted them number 1. But I think Tom Osborne just wanted to put all doubt aside and be able to say we went undefeated. We're one of the greatest teams of all time.
Right.
They threw a pass out in the flat that was underthrown and got knocked down.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. But it just caught my mind, and I just had to ask you. And I saw it because that game, Alonzo Highsmith went off for Miami. I don't even know how Miami was ranked number 10 to start the season off. I mean, Auburn should have been ranked number 1 when they had both. And they were in their wishbone. But if you looked at the game with Auburn, they threw the ball a lot. They were throwing the ball at Auburn and running the wishbone. I was like, dang. I watched the complete game. It was just amazing to see those contrasts and styles and see how well that Miami threw the ball and how Alonzo Highsmith outrushed both.
What game did you watch? Oh, you watched the Kickoff Classic in '84.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. That's what caught my attention about '83. But man, it was I hope you do have a chance to do it. I know you're really busy, but it's kind of interesting. I mean, I would love to hear Cam's explanation of that. I mean, the national championships back in the 80s and 90s, I know I grew up during that time period, and it's kind of outrageous how people voted on who won the national championship now that you look back at it.
Yeah.
You look at some of the teams that could have, should have won it.
It's funny to consider that Joe Paterno won national championships when he lost games and his undefeated teams didn't win national championships.
Right.
And obviously that BYU fiasco in 1984 is crazy.
I don't even know who was good. I think Florida could have claimed that national championship also, right? In '84, Florida could have said it was national championships that year. I think that's what was really good that year.
Well, everybody lost the game.
BYU. What is that, Mark?
Everybody lost a game except BYU.
Right. Yeah, I think Florida said if you look at it, they said we should have won that year, but I don't know what they finished.
Florida. Shoot. Who did they play in '84? 84 in a bowl game. Man, I used to be able to rip these off the top of my head, but I can't remember that. I'm going to have to look this up.
They might have been on probation, but they lost.
I think they were.
First game of the year,
I think they were on probation. They beat West Virginia in the Gator Bowl in 83. In 84, Florida did not. Florida went 9-1-1. They went 5-0-1. This is back when the SEC only played 6 conference games. They went 5-0-1 in the SEC, and they lost to Miami to start the season, 32-20. Then they won the rest of their games except for the tie against LSU, and they beat Florida State to end the season. And so they beat 3 really good teams at the end of the season: Auburn, Georgia, and Florida State, all ranked in the top 12 in the nation. Finished 9-1-1 and did not go to a bowl game. Florida.
Yeah, that's just amazing, man. My major in college was history, and I love history, especially history of college football.
Oh, it's fascinating.
You might catch me dwelling on it. Yeah. So, and that was just amazing, man. Like I said, man, you can poke holes through it that year. Like the year that Clemson won, I think everybody else had 2 losses. I mean, I'm going to let you go after this, but nobody talks about how great Pitt was in the 70s.
Sure.
Nobody ever talks about it. Yeah, nobody ever talks about how good Pitt football was. Even in the 80s, I mean, they were really good.
You know what I watched?
Talks about it.
You know what I watched a few minutes of today? Speaking of, I watched a few minutes of the 81 Pitt-Penn State game because I remember watching this as a kid, and Pitt was number 1. They're playing Penn State at the end of the year in 81, and Penn State was really good. They actually beat Marcus Allen and USC in the Fiesta Bowl that year, and they had Todd Blackledge. He was the freshman quarterback, and they beat Pitt, who had Dan Marino, of course, at quarterback. And then Pitt went on and beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, but they were upset by Penn State, and that cost them a national championship in 81. Oh, possibly a national championship. Of course, Clemson won the whole thing. They were undefeated. Yeah, and you wonder why there wasn't a better matchup for Clemson in the Orange Bowl. They played, I believe, Nebraska was 9-2.
Right, and then Turner Gill wasn't even that quarterback. I forgot the guy name that was that quarterback. I know Rozier and
that's a good question.
Urban Fryer, but the quarterback wasn't even Turner Gill. Because I asked my uncle all the time. I said, man, I didn't play against Turner Gill. But we heard about that game, and everybody was talking about it. I'm like, they didn't play Turner Gill. Wasn't in that game, but I'm gonna let you go. But let me tell you this though: the year that BYU was won the national championship, they beat Pitt. But Pitt had an awful season. They was 3-7-1 that year, and they had lost a whole bunch of games. But at the end of the year, they beat Penn State 31-11. That's kind of amazing that it was that terrible that year.
So
they started off the season.
I'm going to have to look this up to make sure, but Turner Gill did throw the most passes for Nebraska that year in 1981.
There was a white guy. I don't know his name. But,
it must have been Mark Maurer.
Somebody else. So, but Mark, you have a good night, man. I enjoyed the show. I'll make sure I leave you a donation. And you have a great night, man.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Another good footnote, Roger Craig was the starting running back along with Mike Rozier for Nebraska in that bowl game against Clemson.
Right.
All right, DeAndre.
And Urban Fryer was there, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Irving Fryer only caught 3 passes the entire season in 1981. He was but a freshman at that point, so he was stellar later in playing, of course, against Miami in the 1983, meaning 84, January 1st, 84 Orange Bowl. this Nebraska team that played Clemson in the national championship game. Well, it wasn't the national championship game. It was the Orange Bowl. Nebraska was 9-2. They would not have won the national championship. But this Nebraska team, and I remember it well now, it's bringing back all sorts of memories. Roger Craig, and for you younger fans may not know, Roger Craig was a great running back for the San Francisco 49ers in the 80s. He was on that team. Mike Rozier, who won the Heisman in 83, played for the Houston Oilers. Tom Rathman, great fullback for San Francisco, who won multiple Super Bowls, was on that team. And again, Irving Fryer as well. All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Nate.
Hey, Nate. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. What's going on tonight?
Just, it's going. It's pretty dark out right now. And it's going.
Dang. What's on your mind tonight, Nate?
I actually watched when Georgia said early predictions for college football playoffs and way too early predictions. Not going to be too cocky about Michigan and stuff. So in my mind, for college football playoff is probably Ohio State. Maybe Clemson if they probably do good. I'm sure they will, but if they win all their games. Number 3, probably Georgia or Florida. That was my third one. Tie. 4. I gotta go. If Arizona State does pretty good, I'd probably pick them for dark horse. That's my early prediction.
All right. Good stuff. Everybody loves to make predictions.
Yeah. Even though I really like to make predictions for Ohio State game. But overall, just want to talk about that and just let you know I said hi and yeah.
Well, it's always good to hear from you. We always appreciate your contribution. I'm always intrigued by your Nebraska, Michigan, and Ohio State fandom, that you're a fan of all 3 teams.
Yeah, don't tell me that I'm like a Ohio State fan. So he's a Michigan fan. So I secretly put Ohio State in there to mess with him. So yeah.
Well, that would mess with him, that's for sure.
Yeah. I just want to say hi and how's it going? So have a good night and take care.
Thanks a lot, Nate. Take care.
Bye.
Our guy Nate on the line talking college football. All right, we're here at 860-325-3687. I'll get that number on the line, but please try to stow that away for future shows because I try to keep as many of the posts on the screen as I possibly can. Yes, BW, yes. I'm behind on the comments, meaning right now you made this comment at 11:44, 17 minutes ago. But if I stayed current on the comments, then I wouldn't get to as many comments as I could. Plus, I would just be scrolling through comments. I'm going to be able to make it through a lot of comments now because I don't see anything worthwhile here. You guys are talking about NCAA, whatever. Jesse, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate that. We were comparing the SEC East and the Big Ten East. Okay, that's fine. The SEC East and the Big Ten East. It's pretty decent conversation. I think it's legit. I don't think it's like comparing the Big Ten East or the SEC West and the ACC Coastal. It's an actual conversation, a debate. Which division's better? The SEC East with, of course, Georgia, Florida, Missouri, Tennessee, South Carolina, Kentucky. Only really Vanderbilt, where the Big Ten East. There we go. There, it just came back. I had lost. It just didn't go to sleep. It went black. So again, Jesse, thank you so much for the contribution here. It's always appreciated, much appreciated. I cannot explain or describe in any way how much I appreciate the contributions. You can also do that on Venmo and PayPal. If you go to the description section of any of the videos, you'll see that I've got a link to Venmo and a link to PayPal, and you can contribute right there as well. And it comes directly, meaning bypassing YouTube. So I appreciate that. I also want to remind everyone, as I talked about this at the top of the show, subscribe to my buddy Steve Thompson's show on YouTube. It's fun. I think you'll gain a lot from it. It's fun. Does a top 5 memes of the week segment each and every week. It's fun. Just give it a shot. Give it a look. And then he will at times, in a very fun, lighthearted way, weave a little thought-provoking conversation in there as well. All right. James Scott talking about Juice Williams. 2008 Rose Bowl lost to USC 49-17. Not much of a game. But the game they're talking about is from the 84 season. Yes, that was Illinois and UCLA. From the 83 season, January of 84, Illinois came in as a top 5 team in the nation, 10-1, with Jack Trudeau at quarterback, later NFL quarterback, and Mike White as head coach, going to UCLA, taking on Terry Donahue, who had a great run at UCLA. Look up Terry Donahue's record. He's not given the respect or the recognition as being a great college football head coach that he was, because he never seriously competed for a national championship. They would always lose 1 or 2 games during the season, but he had a great run of Rose Bowls, Terry Donahue at UCLA, meaning in 82, they beat Michigan in the Rose Bowl. 83, they beat Illinois in the Rose Bowl. 84, didn't go to the Rose Bowl. 85, UCLA and Terry Donahue beat Iowa, a top 5 Iowa team that was 10-1 in the Rose Bowl. So he had 3 big Rose Bowl wins there. And I think that was the end of his run. Yes, it was, of winning Rose Bowls. And he was at UCLA up until about 90? See what else we've got here. And again, I would invite everyone to follow me on Twitter, take part in our daily and our regularly scheduled polls. I'm not going to promise that we post a poll each and every day. Soon. Okay, there you're talking, Jesse. To piggyback on what James said, we need to get to 25,000 subscribers in 131 days. By the start of the college football season, what we hope is going to still be the beginning of the college football season, I got to say that we were on a run. We were on a roll during last college football season in regards to subscribers. We were on a roll, and I was gaining about 1,200 per month. And it's been rough since late December, more like 350 per month. I don't know what's happened, but we're going to keep the grind going, and we'll make it through, and we'll start to build again. But thanks to guys like James and Jesse helping us build the channel. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Michael. How you doing tonight?
Michael, I'm doing great. How are you?
Not too bad. I was wondering if you forgot to pay the light bill there for a moment when the lights went out.
Oh, is that what? So it went out for you as well?
No. It just went black on the screen.
So your screen went black.
It just went black.
So that was my question. It went black for you as well.
Yeah, the screen went black.
That's
and then,
weird.
Maybe 26
That is really weird. So it went black for me, and my initial thought was, oh, I didn't plug in my charger, but it was plugged in. It was, the green light was on. Everything was charged. And so I just thought that the screen might have went to sleep. And so I was hitting all sorts of buttons to try to get the screen to wake up, but that wasn't it. That was really strange. Okay. It's good to have you, Michael.
All right. Anyway, yeah, thank you. Hey, I got a question for you. I just sent something in the chat room. I don't know if you've seen it yet. I was just thinking about this. If you were to take one school, and like for me, I did the 1966. Hello?
I'm with you.
Okay, take the 1966 Purdue Rose Bowl team versus maybe the 1979 Purdue team with Mark Herman, the only time they had 10 wins in the season, or the 2000 team when Coach Stoner took them back to Pasadena.
Sure.
Or the 79 and the 2000 team and stuff like that. Who do you think would win if they would play each other? Have you ever thought about maybe doing some games like that with other schools or talking about that?
Oh, that's interesting.
From past and previous?
Well, so there's a thought there that athletes are getting better throughout the course of time. So we have to take, so do we take that into consideration? I'm asking the question, do we take that into consideration, or do we just consider everybody to be equal athletically, and then we basically are rating the teams against their competition and who was the most dominant? Do you follow me there?
Yep.
Because otherwise we could say a 7-5 team from right now, and I'm not saying this is for sure, I'm just saying a lot of people are in this camp, that athletically take Purdue 2019 at 4-8. A lot of people would say they would beat Purdue of Bob Greasy 1966, 67, even though that team against its competition was much better. So we would almost have to take that out of it and just say, okay, who was better against its schedule? And you're fielding three of the better teams of Purdue recent history. Again, the team that went to the Rose Bowl in 67, right? Was it 67?
Yeah, the 66, 67 season.
Yeah, so Indiana went the next year, 67. So 66, Bob Greasy at quarterback, who is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, of course. And then you've got this 79 team. So I'm trying to think, 79, is that the team that beat Tennessee in the Blue Bonnet Bowl?
Yes, it was. When Mark Herman threw the late touchdown to Dave Young with under a minute to go, I believe.
And I remember the next year they were in line to possibly win the Big Ten championship, but they ran into a great Michigan defense the next to last weekend of the season in 1980.
Yeah.
They had some good teams with Jim Everett.
That game too.
Yeah, that
was Mark Herman.
Yeah, so that Michigan defense, that Michigan defense shut them out like 26-0, something like that.
Yeah, but that was Mark Herman. So.
And then they Michigan beat Ohio State and Art Schlechter the next week 9-3, an Ohio State team that was ranked number one in the country earlier in the season, and then won Bo Schembechler's first Rose Bowl. And then you had some good teams under Jim Everett in 84, 85, 86.
Yeah. I think 86 team, I think they went 3-8, and then in 85, I think it was like 5-6.
Whoa.
If memory serves.
Okay, well, I know they were better than that a couple times. that they were. Let's see this here. Purdue, 1984. I know they beat Ohio State, a top 10 Ohio State team.
Yeah, they beat Michigan, Ohio State, and Notre Dame that year.
There you go. So 1984, Purdue finished. They only finished at 7-5. So, Leon Burnett.
Yep, in 85 they was 5-6, and in 86 they was 3-8.
So this is interesting.
I think that was Burnett's last year.
So this is interesting that in 1984, despite only finishing 7-5,
7-5 year.
They beat Notre Dame, who was number 7 in the country, 23-21. They lost a close game against Miami, who was number 5. They beat number 2 ranked Ohio State 28-23 in West Lafayette, and they beat Michigan 31-29. So very odd season. And then, as you mentioned, 1985. So they only went 5-6 that year, but they gave Ohio State a pretty good battle in Columbus. I think that game was 27-all in the fourth quarter. Yeah.
Yeah, the final score was 41-27.
Yeah.
And I think Ohio State dominated most of the game, and Purdue scored a couple late touchdowns to make it respectable. But
no, it was the other way around. It was a close game. I'm almost certain it was 27-all, and Ohio State scored 2 late touchdowns to pull away.
You might be right. I remember I thought it was the other way around because I know Michigan shut them out 47-0 and stuff. But no, 86 was last year for Leon Burnett because he went to doing the Colts and Akers. First year was 87 with Purdue. So.
Yeah, and then they were bad from 86 until 97 was their big year that they broke out with Billy Dickens at quarterback and won the Alamo Bowl over Kansas State. Or 98. 97
was Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State, that's right. They beat Oklahoma State in the Alamo Bowl. Then they came back and beat a top 5 Kansas State team, which was an interesting bowl game in that Purdue, I believe, was only 7-4 or 8-4. They had 4 losses with Billy Dickens at quarterback, and it would have been Drew Brees the next year. But they got matched up against a top 5 Kansas State team that came an eyelash from playing in the national championship game. And suddenly they're playing Purdue in the Alamo Bowl, and Purdue pulls off the upset.
Yeah, but I will say this, though, in that Kansas State game, Purdue dominated, and then all of a sudden they started playing sloppy, and then like K take it back in, and then of course they had the late drive to win the game for Purdue.
Yep.
But no, I was just wondering stuff like that. What's your take would be if you were to do that with some other teams, like put like the 79 team in that area with the 66 team with Bob Greasy and them, and then the same thing with 2000, and then reverse it and put them in each other's area and see how much fun that would be, though.
Well, again, if we're just chatting teams out there, man, I gotta think that I'll take Drew Brees all day. I know I'm not thinking about the rest of the team, but they also had 2 NFL defensive ends on that team. Wasn't Sean Phillips on that team? And who was the other guy? They had another really good defensive end on that team.
It wasn't Kerrigan. It was I know TK Kiffery, but he was linebacker. One Nation Adele, was it? I know he had a couple also.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep. But in your opinion, though, how much would it have been fun to see Drew Brees go up against Mark Herman in that pro-style offense?
Sure.
With Jim Young back in the 70s and with Bob Greasy in the 60s. That would have been fun to watch.
Oh, absolutely. That would be fascinating. That would be a dream come true for all of us as college football fans to be able to match up teams from throughout history and actually play the games.
Yep. All right, then, Mark. Thanks so much for your time. Have a great night, man.
All right, Michael. Have a good one.
Okay, take care. Yep. Bye-bye.
Yeah. We need a time machine. One of my favorite Twilight Zone episodes is when they invent a time machine because the guy is sick of the nuclear age. We should bring him up to 2020. He's sick of the nuclear age and the threat of war and technology, and he just wants to get away, and he sends himself back to a sleepy little town in Indiana in like 1895. Goes back from 1960 to 1895. That'd be like us going from 2020 back to 1960. And it's a great episode. I won't spoil it for you. All right. What else do we have? Yes, College Football Frenzy. Let's go. There's DeAndre right there. Thank you so much for the contribution. DeAndre, if a lot of other people would catch the vision, $1 a month. $1 a month, especially through Venmo or PayPal in particular. We're pushing 20,000 subscribers. Well, I don't want to jump ahead now. We're at 18,945. 18,945. And as Jesse and James pointed out, why don't we make that the goal? Let's see. For me to get from 19,000 to 25,000, 6,000 subscribers in a little over 2 months. That's a huge endeavor. But for a goal to be a true goal, it's got to be realistic, but it needs to be up there. Need to set the bar high. So I like the way you guys are thinking. 25,000 subscribers by college football season. That'd be beautiful. So I think the most effective way for you guys to help me do that is just tell people about what we're doing here. And I say this all the time, and I truly believe it, that even if you don't agree with my opinion, and I hope that at some point all of you don't agree with everything I have to say, but if you believe that I do my homework, I'm credible, we have fun here, we're hardcore, passionate college football fans, we love the debate, the discussion, the analysis, and you like what we do here, that you get out there on social media and draw people in and just tell people that we're here talking college football each and every day. And if I was able to do this full-time, full throttle all the time, I would do a show like this every day, every night. I would be here every 24 hours talking college football, taking calls. But we will continue to take one from PJ Fleck. Row the boat. I'll be here rowing the boat every day. And hang on just a second. These are some of the topics that I've been collecting to address in future weeks. See what we've got here. How about got too many documents here. Too many. And my computer's too slow. My computer is too slow. Keeping you guys hanging here. How about, see if you guys like these topics. Guys apparently don't like the NFL draft because I'm not getting any views on the NFL draft. But beyond the NFL draft, I'm going to unleash my realignment of college football conferences. So you're going to see these videos. The new Big Ten, the new SEC, the new Big 12, the new ACC, and the new question mark conference, the new fill in the blank mystery conference. Bragging rights. This is going to cause some discussion and debate. Clemson versus Ohio State. So the obvious choice there is Clemson has all the bragging rights against Ohio State. It's 4-0. If you're a Clemson fan and you run into an Ohio State fan, and you guys do this all the time, I see on our live chats all the time and on Twitter, I see it constantly. Bow the chest, you got the argument. It's 4-0. But we're going to address it a little deeper than that. Clemson versus Ohio State, bragging rights. SEC supremacy. It's been Alabama, despite the LSU national championship in 2019, of course. I had to think about that. 2019, and Auburn winning in 2010, and Georgia being really good the last 3 or 4 years. Alabama's owned the SEC since Nick Saban jumped on board in 2007, 08. Since 08, Alabama has owned the SEC. Who will own the SEC over the next decade? Going to work on that video. Ohio State's biggest threat in the Big Ten over the next 5 years or so. Who will that be? How about Clemson's biggest threat in the ACC over the next 5 years? The Georgia-Florida debate. Georgia owns the East. They've won it 3 consecutive years. Florida is getting better under Dan Mullen. But Georgia is still out recruiting Florida. The Georgia-Florida debate. We're going to wage that one. I even DVR'd the game from last year the other night. I saw that it was on. I DVR'd it. I thought, you know what? What we're going to do? We're going to do a show where we're going to talk Georgia, Florida, and we're going to sit in front of my TV and I'm going to roll the game from last year and we're going to talk Georgia, Florida. Okay. Georgia's going to love that. The Georgia-Florida debate. Okay. Texas takeover. Texas out-recruits Oklahoma. If you like the recruiting rankings and believe in the recruiting rankings, Texas out-recruits, not by a lot, but they out-recruit Oklahoma, but they can't beat Oklahoma. They can beat them sometimes on the field, but overall, Texas loses these other games. Oklahoma does not. What's going on there? Can Texas take over the Big 12? I don't know what I was going for here. I was thinking about a Chip Kelly video. I don't know what I was going for there quite yet. When will Nebraska be Nebraska again? What's it going to take? Can it happen? I'm going to address that in a video because you got to figure, think if you were in my place, some of what I do here is successful. But there are a lot of things that I produce videos on that I find interesting, and apparently people don't, you guys don't, or not enough of you, and YouTube doesn't get it out there in the suggested videos, and it just doesn't do well. So it's basically, even though I find interest in it, and especially if I put time into it, it was a waste of my time. I can't do that anymore. I have to find what you guys want and what people are going to find on YouTube and lock into. So that's what I'm trying to figure out. I need to spend less time actually creating the content, and I need to spend more time figuring out what content is going to make it on YouTube. And I've got to find more time to brand and market all this. I got to be a businessman. All right. When will Nebraska be Nebraska again? I'd like to do that video. Miami football history. It's historical in pockets, in small pockets. Miami fan, you don't like to hear this, but basically you've got a 10-year football program. Over the course of history, Miami's been really good about 10 years. From about 1981 or 2 to 94, 95, for those 15 years, maybe 15 years. And then for 2 or 3 years, around 1999, 2000, 2001, 2, in there for about 3 or 4 years, 4 or 5 years. Other than that, nothing. Miami, other than those 2 pockets of time, that total about 15 to 20 years total, Miami is Michigan State, Miami, and not the good Michigan State, not Mark D'Antonio Michigan State. They're Michigan State They're Pitt, and not Pitt, Tony Dorsett, Dan Marino, Jackie Sherrill Pitt. They're Pitt like 7-5 Pitt. They're Washington State, Arizona State, Oklahoma State. Again, not good Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State going 7-5. So I'm going to address that. And basically, I did this to a certain extent. I had grown a little weary of Miami fans talking about how great they are and elite they are. Okay, you're not elite now. And you're not elite throughout history. You're elite for 2 pockets of time. And when I say elite, I mean, yes, I'll give you your due, through the roof, not going 10-2, winning national championships, elite. Yes. But other than that, marginal. And over the past 15 or 16 football seasons, 50% winning percentage, 57% winning percentage, marginal. That's marginal. They've been Pitt, Georgia Tech, not Iowa. They haven't been as good as Iowa in the last 15 years. Miami's not anywhere close to Iowa. Yeah. Who else could we think of? Everybody I'm coming up with in the SEC is better. Kentucky? But Kentucky's kind of weird because Kentucky wouldn't be as good as Miami, but over the last few years, they've been better than Miami. Kentucky's been much better than Miami the last few years. Northwestern. Jesse, Northwestern, Miami. Pretty close call. Through the last 5 or 6 years, Northwestern's been better than Miami. Northwestern has won. They had this awful last season, 3-9. They had a 5-7 back a few years ago. But other than that, they won 10 games 4 out of 5 years. Northwestern's been better than Miami.
Press 1 to start the call or 2 to decline. The call will start at the beep.
I think I know what this is going to be about. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
How you doing, Mark Rogers? Good evening.
Hey, who's on the line?
This is Jalove T. How you doing?
Jalove T. I'm doing just fine. How are you, man? It's good to hear from you.
Great. I'm finally sober in the right mind, so I guess we can have a better conversation about this.
Okay.
I just wanted you to repeat what you said, and I will respect it to the fullest. So, did you say Miami is not an elite program?
I said
because of winning percentage, even though we have the championships, but because of the winning percentage, you can't call them an elite program. So Miami is not an elite historical program.
Not right now. You're not elite. How are you elite?
No. Historically, when you talk about historically, that means past, present, and future.
Well, we don't know about the future. Forget about the future.
I'm just repeating what you said.
Okay. I said that there are 2 pockets of time from the early 80s.
No, ask your question, Mark. Ask your question.
Yeah.
Historically, between now, which is April 19, 2019, to whenever they started,
yep,
the day they started their dynasty run, Miami history is not an elite program.
Why are you?
An elite program,
yeah, but you can't.
History, or they're not.
You can't be selective. You can't select the years that you want to be analyzed. You can't do that.
Their football program started in the 1960s, 1970s. I have no choice but to start in the 80s. Okay, if you want to go back to the 60s, 50s, whenever they started their football program, we can go there also.
The 60s, try like the 1920s.
Okay, the 20s. Okay.
You can't pick and choose your years you want to have analyzed.
Okay. Through the 20s, from this year 2020 all the way back to 1920,
Miami's not an elite program. Is that what you? Yes or no?
Over the course of college football history, is
Yes.
Miami an elite program? Over the course of the entire history of college football?
Come on, you can't repeat yourself, man. Come on now, Mark. Come on now, Mark.
No. No.
So is Georgia an elite program?
No.
Oh, okay. That's nice. Okay, I had to get you. Okay. That's nice. So Florida's an elite program.
Florida?
Yeah.
They're more elite than those two over the history of college football, over the entire history of college football.
Florida's more elite than Miami. Okay.
The point, J Love T. Okay, follow me here. I was making the reason I brought up Miami is because I was pointing out that Miami is an interesting case more than any other program. It's a more interesting debate because the success has been so concentrated and the success has been so through the roof in those short spans of time. But other than that, they've been marginal.
So how many elite programs are in college football?
Okay. There is no question. I'm not talking about right now. We're talking about in the history of college football.
What you mean right now? It's history. History is history. I mean, we're talking about right now. We can't discount.
This is the point.
If Alabama was to go on a 15-20-year run of not winning any championship, that would not take them out of the running of not being an elite program.
True.
If Clemson was to stop their championship run today, that wouldn't stop them from not being an elite program.
Sure it would.
15, 20
Sure it would, because Clemson was not an elite program prior to 2015. So yeah, if Clemson needs to keep this up, Clemson is not historically in the Alabama, Ohio State, USC tier. They're not.
So they're Miami. So they're in the same boat with Miami, basically. That's what you're saying.
To a certain extent. But they're doing it right now. So they are elite right now. No question.
Okay,
Clemson is probably the best football program in the country right now. Pardon me?
How many elite college football programs there are?
In the history of college football, Notre Dame's elite. Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, Oklahoma, Texas, USC. And I'm going to give you two other programs that have an argument. And I'm doing this all the top of my head, so cut me some slack if I forgot somebody. But there are two other programs that have an argument. Penn State and Nebraska.
I agree.
Now, if we're just if you want to look at just post-1980, which is a long period of time, it's 40 years, then I'm going to give you Miami. That would be the first program I would give you. And I'll give you Florida State.
No, that wouldn't be fair. When I meant by history, I meant by history and throughout. I disagree with Notre Dame on your list. I respect Ohio State. I respect Alabama. But I don't know. Like I said, I don't agree with Notre Dame. I would put Miami above. How many championships Notre Dame have? Because this is the conversation that we had last week. Forget winning percentage. It's all about championships. Forget what,
okay.
Come on now.
J Love TV. J Love T, you're at the right place because we put things into context and we're here to inform and educate people. So we love the debate here, but you have to understand that national championships throughout the years in college football, it's not like arguing Super Bowls. National championships are tainted. They're vague, they're tainted. There's all sorts of controversies. There are all sorts of opinions. Teams didn't play the right schedules. They didn't play the right opponents in bowl games. there's all sorts of mess to weed through when you talk about it. There is a national championship, J Love T, in 1990, claimed by Colorado, and they are the national champions. They won a game because they got a 5th down. And they also lost a game and tied a game. They rightfully lost 2 games and tied a game, and they're the national champions for 1990. There's a team, BYU, that won a national championship in 1984. They are the national champions. Guess how good the team was that they played in a bowl game that year? They played Michigan. Michigan's record, get this, J Love T, was 6-6. And they won the national championship, playing a 6-6 team in a bowl game. I can sit here for the next hour and give you all sorts of examples of questionable national championships.
Okay, so let me
But the winning percentage is the winning percentage. When you go out on a field and you play a game, a team wins and a team loses. So the winning percentage, it can be argued who had a tougher schedule and all those other things.
Yes.
But basically, the winning percentage can't be debated. And especially if you play in a major conference over a course of history, you played in the Big Ten or the SEC and you get a certain winning percentage, it's valid.
What about the last 30 years? We can't really say it's valid. Yeah,
That's what I'm telling you, J Love T. I'm telling you, if you just want to isolate college football to 1980 and beyond, from 1980 to the present day, I would include Miami and Florida State as elite football programs. I'd have to think about Florida. Florida might be in there. They got 3 national championships.
Like I said, why does Michigan and Notre Dame get to pass?
What do they get a pass on? They don't get a pass.
They do get a pass. You call them elite. How are they elite? You put them elite over Miami. How?
Who do you think has the best winning percentage in the history of college football?
Winning percentage. Come on, Mark, man. You in this winning percentage, Mark, man. Come on. I'm not gonna lie, Mark, man. You know how the Twitter world is, man. This is gonna be one of the biggest conversations of the weeks, man.
I hope so. We need to blow up my channel. It should be. Ohio State and Michigan have the 2 best winning percentages in the history of college football.
See, this is why you're smiling, because you're an Ohio State fan, so you could regardless. You got the championships and the winning percentage. So and nobody is gonna disagree with Ohio State not being elite. Even me as a Hurricanes fan. So yeah, you can still all you want through the camera. But it is what it is. But me as a Hurricanes fan and me as a club, I understand your theory about championships, but championships matter, man. They matter, man.
I'm not saying they don't matter at all. I'm not saying they don't matter at all, but I'm just saying you cannot argue championships in college football like they're Super Bowl championships, NBA championships, World Series. Like there's a fair system and they competed through the playoffs and then they played and there was a Super Bowl and we know who won. These national championships are sketchy. But there is obviously, to win a national championship, you had to be really good that year and win certain games and win a bowl game. But J Love T, how old are you? Can I ask how old you are?
My bad, 28, 20 on the comment section. Oklahoma is elite. I consider Oklahoma elite too. I know some people will argue about it, but I just want to put that out there. Even though they're in the Big 12.
I put them on my list.
I consider Oklahoma elite.
I put them on my list.
Okay. Oh, how old I am? I'm 30. So I'm
You're 30.
Fresh off
Okay.
I was born in 1990, so I'm fresh off. I was blessed. You know what I'm saying?
So the only point I'm making is that, yes, national championships, yes, absolutely, they count for something. Of course they count for something, but I'm just trying to let you know that it wasn't always the way it is now. that there was a time in which there was this whole sketchy voting system and polls and all this other business to determine who won the national championship. The year Miami won its first national championship, we could debate all night who should have won the national championship. And it's not that Miami lucked its way into a national championship or didn't deserve it, but it's just that other teams deserved it just as much. And I know that there were years that Miami fans could claim they got ripped off. And I think that's valid. It's a valid argument. 2000, 2002, I get it.
Yeah, but you can't. I'm sorry, Mark, man. I don't know that. You're gonna have a thousand emails and 1,000 phone calls.
I hope so.
About Miami not being elite. I don't have an issue with Miami not being elite. We said Miami so far said Miami's not elite. Clemson is not elite. They have to win more, which is in my case. That's you know.
Where do you draw the line? If you're strictly going by J Love T. If you're strictly going to go by national championships, where do you draw the line then? How many national championships do you need? And who counted the national championships? Because you count them, different schools count them different ways and different, you got the AP poll, you got the USA Today poll, you've got this, you got that, you got the UPI poll from 1936 until USA Today took it over, then ESPN took it over. You've got all sorts of different people counting. And so where's the bar of national championships? Does everybody who ever won a national championship, are they elite? Army's elite. UCLA's elite that way. Michigan State's elite. We can go through all sorts of teams that have won national. Georgia Tech's elite. Colorado's elite. BYU's elite. If all you need to do is win one national championship. Pardon me?
How many championships BYU have?
One.
Come on, Mark.
Man. Well, that's what I'm asking. That's what I'm asking. How many do you have to have? Okay, then how many do you have to have? You're telling me that there's a magic number of national championships that you have to be elite. Then you tell me, what is that? Oh, you got to have 4. Why'd you come up with 4? Why 4? And why do you get to decide that you need 4 national championships to be elite? Why 4? This is an arbitrary number. You just pulled it out of the air. 4. You picked out 4 because you've got 5. What if I say you need 6?
I don't make the rules.
Well, you're making the rules now. So if I make the rules, how about if I say 6? You need 6 national championships.
We'll finish this conversation. We will finish this conversation. I cannot wait until Canes talk. Because I know Cam and Olsenwood are going to want to have this conversation with you. I hope Cam backs me up. You feel me? Because, he's very professional in his ways. But I know...
Well, of course he will.
Oh, my God.
And I wouldn't expect anything less. This is the point I'm making. Okay, let me summarize it. And this is my statement. I'll say the same thing if Cam's here. I will say, in my opinion, and I certainly base this on information, fact, championships, winning percentage, all those things, that over the entirety of college football history, Miami is not elite. Okay, has Miami been elite? Absolutely, they've been elite. They have been the best program in college football over different periods of time. In the late 80s, the early 90s, Miami was elite. They were the best program in college football. In the early 2000s, they were arguably the best program in college football. And if you took from 80 to the present day, I would include Miami as an elite program. Are they an elite program right this second? No. Clemson is, Alabama is, Ohio State is, but they're not. They're not elite going 6-6 and 7-5 every year. That's elite.
Nobody's debating that money. You don't have to pick a horse while it's down. Nobody's debating that. The only reason I called because you said on air, and I wanted to make sure because I didn't think I heard you right, but I guess you did repeat yourself. Because Miami historically is not an elite program. Yeah, we had our 10-year run, but historically we're not an elite program. And I disagree. Especially when you put Michigan and Notre Dame on top of Miami. Now, I understand Ohio State. I understand Clemson. Even though you don't put Clemson in that category. I put Clemson, Florida State, even though they're our biggest rival. LSU, I call LSU an elite program. So what? LSU is that an elite program?
They are right this second. They're a good argument. They're like a Penn State or a Nebraska, but they're not quite at that level historically over the course of history. But so for you, LSU won its 4th national championship this last year. So if we were having this discussion 4 months ago, LSU was not elite according to your criteria, but they suddenly became elite after they won this last national championship because you need 4.
Correct.
You need 4.
Correct.
4.
Correct.
You just came up with that number.
4 in a 40-year run.
Oh, well, they don't have that. No, they don't have that. Sorry. They're not elite. No, they don't have that. They won their first one in 1959. So LSU's not elite. So you just eliminated them. They got 3. So no, sorry. You made the rule. 4 national championships.
Yeah.
First you said 4 national championships. Now you're saying 4 in 40 years. You need 4 in 40 years. So LSU, you're out. Sorry. You were elite there for a second, but J-Love T then got different information from me. Now he's determined you're not elite now.
Yeah.
I'm just holding you to your rules. Just making sure.
Okay, so what makes Notre Dame elite over Miami, over Georgia?
Over the history of college football, because Notre Dame's won more national championships and they've consistently won more over the history of college football. They get a better winning percentage and more wins. Historically, over the entire course of college football, is Notre Dame elite right this second? No, they're not. But over the history of college football, yes, they are.
That's fair. Don't worry. I will come back with more ammo, aka Camp Underwood and Wholesome one. Hopefully they bring some light in.
So it's going to be 3-on-1.
All right, have a good one.
All right, J-Love T. I always appreciate it. You have a good night.
Press 1 to start the call or 2 to decline.
Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Yeah, who's on the line?
Mark.
Yeah.
You're having an argument over who's elite.
Oh, my word. Did you hear that?
Well, this is what I'm trying to get people to realize, and I know it's hard. Like, let's look at Michigan. We had this conversation before. Like, when they had that run of national championships back in the before the 40s or whatever, they were playing like middle school and high school teams and like surgical schools and stuff like that. I mean, I get it, but
it's Michigan.
Like, grown up, it's still Michigan. I agree with you, but what have they done since like 19, like outside 97, they won a half a championship? I mean, I know what you get about, and I agree with you when you say you can't really base it off of national championships.
Just national championships, no. Did you hear the end of that? Did you hear the end of that conversation? I let him set the bar, and he said 4 national championships. And so then I said, okay, LSU just got to 4. And then he said, well, you got to have 4 in the last 40 years. And so he thought he was safe with LSU. And I said, no, they won their first one in 1959. So suddenly you just told me in the last 20 seconds that LSU was not elite. Then you changed it to elite. And now you're telling me they're not elite just based on national championships. So
it's just hard to pick how you define. That's what I'm telling people. It's hard to define. How can you define what is elite?
Exactly.
I give it to Miami. They were elite at one time.
Yes.
I mean, Florida State was elite at
Absolutely.
one time. But nowadays, it has flipped. I mean, if you go back and look at our conversation earlier, Alabama wasn't elite in the 80s. I mean, I know they had good years, but Auburn was a better program. You could argue Auburn had a better program in the 80s and the 90s. So it's just the times that it flips. I mean, it flips. I mean, it changes throughout time.
Well, that's the other point I'm trying to make is that so let's take Alabama, and let's say we went back in time to 2003. If we're having this argument, and if somebody said, is Alabama an elite program right now? I would say absolutely not. They haven't done anything for most of the last 10 years. They're not elite right now. They're not operating like an elite program right this second, but are they all-time elite? Paul Bear Bryant elite throughout the course of college football history? Yes, they are, but they're not elite right this second. And I'll use the reverse argument for Clemson. Is Clemson elite right now? Absolutely. By any measurement, I think it's the best program in college football right now, but I think they're still working themselves toward elite status all time. They've only been operating at an elite level for the last 5 years.
Right.
Now,
like I said, I mean,
this is constantly evolving. It's not set in stone. If Ohio State goes 2-10 for the next, they'd have to go 2-10 for a long, long time to historically not be elite. But is Ohio State elite right now? Yes. But if they go 5-7 the next 3 years, in 4 years, we're going to say, well, they're not elite right now. They're winning 5 games a year. Of course they're not elite, but not one down season isn't going to say, okay, Ohio State suddenly they went 8-4 this year. They're not elite anymore. They'd have to do that for a few years for us to say, well, for whatever reason, they've played themselves out of elite status right now. They're still historically elite.
And that's my point.
And I'm not trying to make the argument.
On what you're thinking about.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to say just because I say somebody's elite, they're elite, and if I say they're not, it's just my opinion, and I'm trying to give it some fact and some logic behind it. But I'm not trying to tell everyone that what I say is. I'm just giving my opinion. This is how I base my judgment on elite or not elite.
Yeah, because if you go back at Minnesota, if you look at Michigan State in the 60s, Michigan State was a elite program. In the 60s, in the 50s, Minnesota was an elite program. So, yeah, you're right. You just got to look at how it was. If you go back to this is going to be funny, the 30s and the 40s, Carolina Duke was an elite program.
And Army.
I mean, yeah, it just all depends how you look at it. Because you always know I'm going to bring up the injustice of segregation at that time in that society, why some of the programs and those were bigger cities, so those programs had a bigger support system back in the day at Michigan State and Ohio State and Pitt and Penn State. I don't know about Penn State, but you know those schools, because a lot of people lived out there. USC, but for the most part, I agree with you. It's hard to say what's elite, because I was looking at something funny. In 1989, Clemson beat Florida State, and Florida State finished third in the polls that year.
Yep.
And they finished with the same exact record, but Tennessee and Colorado finished behind Florida State, and they only had one loss. So, I mean, there's a lot of factors that we all got to look at. You got to look at year-by-year basis, because you just don't know why those people voted that way for those particular teams. And I was telling somebody who's a Miami fan, 2001 and what's the other year that Miami went undefeated? To me, they only had 2 legit national championships, because somebody else could have came along and said, they're national championships. 1974, Ohio State, Oklahoma, and somebody else claimed a national championship. And Ohio State was 10-2. How you claim a national championship, but Oklahoma was 11-0?
Yeah, sure.
I think that was the year. But people claim national championships at the yin-yang. North Carolina basketball gave themselves a national championship in 1914. How do you do that? I mean, it's a good argument, but it's just, if you can look at it, some of this stuff is a joke when we talk about it. I mean, we always bring up 1991. Illinois beat Colorado and got murdered by Clemson, but Illinois Colorado got voted national championship with one loss. I mean, and Georgia Tech didn't lose to nobody. How they not national champs? So it's crazy, man. It's crazy. But it's hard to say who's elite.
And when I make the statement about national championships, I hope I bring it across that I'm not saying it doesn't mean anything. You, of course, had to be really good to claim a national championship, especially during the college football playoff era and the BCS, and even when the polls were a little bit more accurate later in the process, that just like the 1983 year. I'm not saying that Miami didn't deserve that national championship at all, but it was obviously debatable whether it could have been Texas, Auburn, or Nebraska. But Miami just happened to get it. Now, they earned it, but those other teams kind of earned it too. So I'm just saying, it's not like the Super Bowl. You're an NFL fan. There's no debating when a team wins the Super Bowl. They all played like schedules. They have a playoff format. They go into the playoffs. You have to earn it. You got to win 3 games, maybe 4 if you're a wild card, and you won the Super Bowl. There's no debating. So Super Bowls are different than national championships in college football, especially over the history of the sport. It's just not even, we've poked holes in all sorts of years.
Yeah. And I heard one guy, and this is good, with the NFL draft coming up, I think Alabama and Miami had the most number 1 picks in a certain time period. Yeah. Like Alabama since Nick Saban got there, then those years with Miami. Well, Alabama has had more what you consider to be bust. So they were Miami's a more successful program in that era than what Alabama is in the Nick Saban era. And I say, I can agree with it. It's just hard to say. I mean, if you talk to somebody about it, they'll bring up, oh, look how good Grambling was. They never got a chance to play LSU back in the 50s or 60s. I mean, you come up with all types of arguments that people will bring up and have against it.
And I actually think I was being a bit kind in giving Miami a bit of the benefit of the doubt when J. Love T was saying, okay, since 1980, and I said, well, 40 years is a good period of time. I'll say Miami's elite since 1980 because they won those 5 national championships. They were great from 83 to about 94. Then they had that little pocket of time. But I think that's even being generous because over those 40 years, they've been marginal the last 16. So that's almost half of that time. They've been a non-factor. I did a video a couple months ago looking at their last 16 seasons. They're winning 57% of their games. They've done nothing.
Yeah. And if you, again, it's a perception. Look at, in the 90s, Nebraska probably is the best team in the 90s, but most people would probably say someone in the Florida schools. Yeah. In the 90s, Nebraska was really the standard bearers in the 90s. I mean, they won 3 national championships, and the year some people might say 4. I can't remember what year it was, but I think it was maybe 91 or 92. You can argue they should have won the national championship with 1 loss. So I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, all these teams, all these programs are great, and there's a certain time effect. I mean, does Clemson have a better program than Ohio State throughout history? Probably not, but I'm still going to say Clemson's 4-0 against Ohio State.
Sure.
Ohio State they don't play enough.
And you've got every right to do that. But, yeah, any reasonable Clemson fan is going to say, hey, yeah, we did that. Those were important games. All of them were important games, especially the last 3, especially the last 2. So it wasn't like they were just playing random non-conference games that didn't really matter, and the 2 teams turned out to be 8-4, 7-5 that year. They were playing important games. So every Clemson fan has every right to do that. But you're being reasonable saying, hey, yeah, I'm proud of that 4-0. But at the same time, I understand it's not like we're playing, where you've got bragging rights over Florida State, where we play them every year and we just, beat them, 17 out of the last 20 years, and we played them every year. It's they're
Right.
isolated games over the course of over 40 years. So that has to be taken into consideration. But hey, Clemson fans have every right to say, hey, 4-0 and throw it out there. I would do it. That's fine.
And I don't know if I'm accurate on this, but Ohio State has a losing record against the ACC. I don't know if I'm accurate, but I believe it's true. But
I don't think Ohio State is a losing record against. No, DeAndre. Really?
No, I didn't say I was accurate, but I think it's true. I had to look it up again, but I think they have a losing record against the ACC.
Well, you might be right.
I said I think because I
imagine.
know Virginia Tech got them 1 year. They played State and Carolina like back-to-back years for some reason. They played them like 4 times, like in a 4-year period. They played State 2 years and Carolina 2 years. I know neither one of them beat them, but I think they have to lose the record against
Well, I got it right here. Let's see here. So I'll try to go. They're in alphabetical order against everybody in college football. So Ohio State against Duke, they're 3-1. All right, against Florida State, they're 0-3. So there's 3-4. Who else do we have here? Louisville, they're 2-0. So there's 5-4. Miami, they're 3-2, so that's 8-6. 8-6. Of course, they're 0-4 against Clemson, so there's 8-10. They're 3-1 against North Carolina, so that's 11-11. They're 2-0 against North Carolina State, so there's 13-11. Who else have we missed? Pitt. They're 19-5 against Pitt. So there's 32-16. So this might be tough.
Most of those games are probably won against Pitt in the ACC while they were there, right?
So yeah, that's a good point. So how do you count those? Well, none of them were as an ACC team. So if you want to count those, and again, like Syracuse, they never played. They're 4-1 against Syracuse, but Syracuse wasn't in the ACC. So we'd have to weed through all this. But that's interesting. Virginia Tech, they're only 1-1 because they only played those 2 years recently. They're 1-0 against Virginia. They played them back in 1933, and maybe Virginia wasn't in the ACC at the time. Who knows? And they probably never played Georgia Tech. I don't remember that.
Okay, I read it wrong. They were 0-5 versus the ACC in bowl games.
Oh, yeah. So they lost to Clemson, obviously, 4 times.
Yeah,
and they lost to Florida State.
3-1 versus Duke and 0-1 versus Florida State. Miami, they're 1-1. Carolina, 3-1. And
well, wait a minute. The one time they played Miami in a bowl game was, of course, for the national championship. So if we're just looking at bowl game, but Miami wasn't in the ACC; they were in the Big East. So,
they did.
So again. So it's basically.
But like I said,
I was just going to say it's basically Clemson and Florida State that they've played as ACC schools.
I don't think they played Florida. No, I don't think they played Florida State as an ACC school. If you think about it,
sure they did.
Early Fountain year.
They lost to Florida State in the '98 Sugar Bowl.
Okay, so they got one.
Pitt's another example. They beat Pitt in a bowl game in the Fiesta Bowl, but Pitt wasn't in the ACC yet. There you go.
Yeah, but like I said, though, it all depends how you look at it. I mean, think about it. People might say Florida's the league, but to see Spurrier got there, what were they really doing all the way up there to that time period? I mean, Florida wasn't no powerhouse or like that to Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer came along. I mean,
Sure.
I'm just saying, we all can make these arguments of who was great and why they were great at that time. I mean, look at Houston. I think you had this discussion one time before. Everybody was on probation when Houston was really good in the Southwest Conference.
Sure.
And they were beating teams by 100 points. So, we all can make those arguments, man. I don't know why sometimes these Miami fans or whatever get worked up about it. I mean, they were a good program. Do they have a chance to be great again? I think they do one day, but I mean, they have a lot to correct. I mean, I think Georgia Tech is a team that everybody should watch because of the population, and then also if Stanford and Notre Dame can do it, why can't Georgia Tech? And they're in a more populated area of the country than those two schools. So I really have high hopes for Georgia Tech in its 4 or 5 years with this coach. So I think it can be done. I mean, I will see, but as far as the league thing go, I think you just have to look at it by decades, by years, and when you get a quarterback in there like Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, and we haven't seen what DJ's been able to do, so you get stuff like that. I mean, I have a friend, he's bragging because the son goes playing at Carolina. He said, well, Carolina recruiting class in 2021 is better than Clemson. They barely got started recruiting for next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, Mark, man. You enjoy the rest of your night.
Good stuff, DeAndre. We appreciate it. You have a good one.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Have we hit the end of the line? I think we have. We have exhausted the elite conversation. Where do I stand on Yale? Yeah, let's not dig into that right now. There is certainly a point in time in college football that we could really look at scheduling to say, okay, at what point did this become somewhat legitimate? Where did this become legitimate in regards to determining that this sport resembles what we see today? And I don't mean having to go all the way up to 1990 in terms of style of play and all of that, but where it was structured to a point where we could say, okay, this is reasonable. Because like you say, Yale, that would be something we'd have to put under the microscope of, again, going year to year and at some point making a judgment call. But these things evolve. It's not like we can flip a switch and say, oh, 1927 is illegitimate, and then all suddenly in 1928 it was a different sport, and we can count that. Well, Seabass 85, it's a useless conversation in the scope of life. Yes, it is. But it's a term that's thrown out in college football, unlike any other sport, elite. And so there's a debate. All right, good stuff in the comments section. I'm weeding through all this. I am about 22 minutes behind, so I appreciate everyone's comments. Again, if you have come across me for the very first time, welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. April 20th. This is the first time I've seen you in the live chat, so welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, and this is typically how I do it, like this. Welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Thank you so much for joining. Would love to know how long you've been watching and who you root for. So again, we've got content coming out all the time, so please check it out. Let us know what you would like to see here on our channel. and I will accommodate it unless sometimes people suggest things and I just have to unfortunately say, you know what? Nobody's going to watch that. And I can't put that type of research into that subject and have 112 views. It's just not worth it, unfortunately. So I'm going through all this live chat. It's great stuff here. 288028. Good to see you as always. April 20th. Mark, what is your opinion on the Michigan-Ohio State talent gap? Oh my goodness. We'll get there someday. And we did actually just posted a video with Steve Dace's thoughts on that. I didn't have a whole lot to say, but we had Steve Dace from Michigan Podcast on to talk about that very thing. Thank you so much, April 20th. I have seen you in the comment section. So thanks so much for joining. Yes, Jesse. Just hit the like button. It helps so much. I can't understand it. I can't explain it, what exactly YouTube does, but they want to see likes and comments, and they want to see that after you watch one video that you stay on that channel and watch another video. I watched a YouTuber, a very successful YouTuber just the other night, explain this, that basically the algorithm is so complex, but to weed it down into terms that we can all understand, basically YouTube is saying, okay, somebody's watching this video. Okay, great. Then they're saying number two, and reactioner, I'm going to get to you in just a second. I got to give you some time here. But basically YouTube is saying, okay, good, they're watching this video. Okay, they're watching it for a considerable length of time. And the time viewing, the time spent viewing, the duration is becoming more and more valuable than just somebody clicked on it and then 3 seconds later they're gone. No, they watched 8 minutes out of 10 of this video. So this is a quality watch. Then number two, they liked the video. Then number three, hey, they commented on this video. There could be a number four if they watch another video from this particular person on this channel, but no, they didn't. They moved on to something else. So a negative checkbox is marked. Okay, this guy right here, I know we all love college football here, but we cannot live on college football alone. I love music, and I love one particular artist in particular. Yes, I have a gene. I've got an obsessive gene in my body that I can't get away from, that typically makes me obsessed about certain things in life. So as it is with one Elvis Presley and his phenomenal career and talent and best stage performer of all time, best vocalist of all time, you want to have a debate with me, there you go. But this guy right here, the reactioner, I don't know if he is veered off of his original YouTube channel name, so I don't want to state that. If that's now been changed, you can let me know. The reactioner, you can let me know. And I don't even know his real first name, and I don't know if it's out there, so I'll veer away from that as well. But I will please change the name. Okay, please leave your YouTube channel link in the live chat comments section, because I unfortunately am not giving you the due and the respect and the time and all of that you gave me recently, which is much appreciated. I so much appreciate that he gave me a plug on his channel for college football fans. But this guy can spin a phrase, and more than that, just really puts you in a place where, after watching these videos with him, has taken me to places in regards to his analysis of a song, a style, a mood, what it makes him relate to in his life, that is just beyond description. You go to these reaction channels, and I've become hooked on watching these music reaction channels, and most of them are pretty bad. People have nothing to say. Just, man, that was great. That was awesome. Like, comment, subscribe. That's all they want you to do, basically. This guy really, really, I can't even describe it. You got to go watch his channel. Just does an amazing job of actually connecting you to the music and in a very unique way, describing and explaining. And he's got a way of twisting and turning a phrase again that, yeah, NCIS Fanatic 21 just subscribed. It's a great channel. It's an amazing channel. And he does a phenomenal job on there. Certainly. There's about 3 to 4 reaction channels, music reaction channels that I really enjoy for different reasons, but he's certainly right there at the top of the list. So the Reactionaire, I appreciate that you're right here with us tonight. I have been on here, and I appreciate that many of you as well have been on here for 3 hours and 20 minutes. Okay. My work is done. Thank you so much for the support. Tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, Notre Dame Live. We have to move our Florida State Seminoles live show from Tuesday night to Monday night at 7 o'clock. I'll give you the notification on that as well. Right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Thank you so much for the time, the support, and all that you do, and keeping us going right here. See you next time.